U.S. banking collapse is coming, folks. And what happens when these banks don't have the money to cover these losses? Well, guess what? Forget bailouts, because those aren't sexy anymore. And no politicians want to be involved in it. And the banks know that it's a dirty word. So now the new law is written in the United States of America for bail-ins. As we've been talking about on the show for about 2 years now, bail-ins is now the law of the land in the United States, which means that you who have put your money in these banks, they will use your money to cover these losses, nationalizing basically your currency to cover these losses. This is now federal law in the United States. Here's economist Richard Wolff, great economist, brilliant thinker, to explain this bail-in process which is coming.
The problem is the politicians who give banks big bailouts, as they did, get to be hated by the mass of people who understand very well what's going on. That private banks, to make private money, want the government to bail them out, and they don't want to have to do it. But the banks don't want to do it. So here's what the banks and the politicians got together. They found another sucker. You know who it is? The depositor. It turns out that the laws have been rewritten, starting with a bank in Cyprus that went belly up a few years ago, to allow banks, when they can't recover money they lent and should not have lent, they don't now have to go to the government to get a bailout. They can get a bail-in. You know what that is? Taking money from the depositors who put money in the bank and simply taking it to recoup their own capital that they can't get back from the people they lent to. Is it legal to have a bail-in, to take the money of the depositor and not give it back to them? The answer is yes. In many countries, including the United States, the laws now allow a bail-in.
Now, Free Spirit in the chat here on YouTube says, do we need to empty our bank accounts? And I'm not going to tell you what to do with your money in that way. I can tell you we haven't done that. That's not something that we're going to do. But I think that the government is very concerned that many people will do that, because once they realize the emperor has no clothes. And what they're saying is, of course, that the people who are in the know, if you are in the know, then you will be protected. If you're not in the know, or you're being kept blind about all of this, you will be screwed. And so there was a private FDIC meeting that happened about a year and a half ago. We featured it here on the show at the time. And many of you said, I mean, your jaws hit the floor, as did ours.
In fact, Philip said that he thought it was the Simpsons character that was literally planning evil.
Yes.
Mr. Banks or whatever.
Mr. Burns.
Mr. Burns, is that what it is? Yeah.
Because you guys are not supposed to see this video, okay? These were FDIC bankers discussing bail-ins and how they don't want you to know about it, because if they tell you about it, then you would probably take your money out of the banks, basically. And this is where the issue would arise. So we want to keep it quiet. And actually, they go on to talk about how we would only release this information on a Friday afternoon, essentially. So here is this FDIC meeting, now added with some subtitles so you can hear these guys discussing this back and forth. Lawyers and FDIC bankers basically trying to keep this information from you about what's about to happen with bail-ins. Watch.
Should be accessible when people need to know, but I don't think you have much hope of reaching a public that doesn't have a professional need to know.
I completely agree with that. I almost think you'd scare the public if you put this out. Like, why are they telling me this? Should I be concerned about my bank? Like, my insurance company doesn't tell me what they're doing with my assets. They just assume they're going to pay my claim. Right? I think you've got to think of the unintended consequences of taking a public that has more full faith and confidence in the banking system than maybe people in this room do, that we want them to have full faith and confidence in the banking system. They know the FDIC insurance is there. They know it works. They put their money in. They're going to get their money out. So there's a select crowd of people that are in the institutional side. And if they want to understand this, they're going to find a way to understand this. There's a bunch of law firms represented in this room. There's a bunch of people that charge them by the hour a lot of money to explain this all to them. And it's fine. I don't have a problem with that. And they all have huge staffs. But I would be careful about the unintended consequences of starting to blast too much of this out in the general public.
Yeah.
They don't need to know that.
You guys don't need to know that.
If something is beneficial to people, they don't need to keep that information from you. It's just like, this is so absolutely clear that they are aware of how detrimental this is to people, because you don't try to hide something that's helpful.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. We have a laundry list of that stuff over the past few years, right? I mean, as it relates to COVID. And I mean, look, you're watching us on Rumble right now. There's a big order now for ivermectin ad right there. That was banned and kept from you, right? Oh, that's helpful to people? Don't tell people about it. Keep it quiet from people. You know? Yeah, but wait a minute. So now my money is not really my money. It's nationalized in the event that Bank of America craps the bed. Bank of America earlier this year, of course, made a huge bet on big investments, and they had a paper loss of over $100 billion. Who's absorbing that? These big banks gobbling up all of these smaller banks that go insolvent from these mortgages, these commercial mortgages. Then they gobble them up into one big group and one big entity. Oh, your money's safe. Don't worry, the FDIC will insure you up to $250,000. You're safe until they need your money. Meanwhile, as people are fully aware right now, the alternative, they don't want you to know about the alternative. These banks certainly don't want you investing in gold and silver and precious metals. They absolutely don't. This is the FT, the Financial Times today. Gold hits record high as rate cuts and Middle East tensions fuel demand. Yeah, what's happening in the Middle East right now? Disaster. Here's Bank of America's plan. They call it the last safe haven. Bank of America, gold is the last safe haven amid rising U.S. national debt. And by the way, why is Bank of America buying so much gold right now? You should ask yourself that. Why is JP Morgan Chase buying so much gold right now? You should ask yourself that.
After B of A has a major outage, where customers see $0 on accident in their account, right? And then they're like, well, the U.S. dollar is kind of a joke anyway, so
we're buying gold.
Yeah.
So why are U.S. big banks that operate in U.S. dollars buying up so much gold? Wake up, people. Pay attention to what's happening right now. And you guys should be privy to this information, but the FDIC bankers that keep it behind closed doors don't want you to know this information. So thank you guys so much for subscribing and being part of our channel here.
What most people don't understand is that once you give a bank your money, the money is legally no longer yours.
Once you give a bank your money, the money is legally no longer yours. They've had it written into law.
Under the law, depositors are considered unsecured creditors to the bank and are treated as such under any...
Legally, the bank owns the depositor's funds as soon as they put the money in the bank. Your money becomes the bank's, and you become an unsecured creditor.
Bankruptcy proceeding. This type of loss happened with the collapse of MF Global. And while MF Global was a futures trading company and not a bank, the blueprint for confiscations was delivered here. The losses of customer funds were upheld by the legal system with the Sentinel case. Another important fact is this. These speculative derivatives have super priority status in a bankruptcy proceeding, which means that any derivative contract holder gets paid first, before shareholders, creditors, and depositors like you.
It could well be that local government deposits are at risk in the event of the bail-in of one of the major banks in Wall Street when they next fail. Those are unsecured deposits. Now, Wall Street likes to say they've been collateralized, but the derivatives holdings of the major banks is several times the world's gross domestic product. There isn't enough money in the world to cover major losses in that market. So if they start to go down, first, the counterparties to derivatives get covered. That's the new law. They get their money first. You'll get your money, you an individual depositor, or you a city, if there's any left.
You get your money as an individual depositor or as a city depositor if there's any money left. What do you think the odds are there's going to be any money left? No, it's not a trick question.
What you might get instead is equity in the bank. So instead of having $400 million to meet your city's payroll, you may have $200 million and $200 million in new stock in the bank, in which you just become a shareholder. But try meeting a payroll in stock in a failed bank.
If you think that the FDIC will still come riding to the rescue, consider these facts. This chart will look at three figures: the FDIC insurance fund balance, the total deposits in U.S. banks, and the total derivatives exposure of the big banks. The FDIC has approximately $25 billion in its fund to cover losses. The total deposits in U.S. banks totals $9,283 billion. The U.S. bank's derivatives total is $297,514 billion. The FDIC could only cover 0.25% of all deposits, and the FDIC could only cover 0.008% of the derivatives.
Looking at the FDIC Bank of England joint paper summary, the text clearly says that in the U.S., they will use the powers granted under the Dodd-Frank Wall Street Reform Act, and losses will be assigned to shareholders and unsecured creditors. Remember,
shareholders and unsecured creditors. You're an unsecured creditor. Your money's in the bank. You're an unsecured.
That as a depositor in a bank, under the law, you are an unsecured creditor. Moving further on down in this document, the text clearly says that the strategy for a failed global systemically important financial institution will be to assign losses to shareholders and unsecured creditors. Going further down the same document, you will see that the text clearly says that a resolution strategy for a failed globally systemically important financial institution will be to assign the losses to shareholders and unsecured creditors. Remember that you are now looking at an official government document and the plans for confiscation.
If you're a public official with fiduciary responsibility to protect public monies, this news is critically important with far-reaching implications about what your responsibility demands. If you can't deposit public monies into the large Wall Street banks without being at proven risk of losing access to it to confiscation under existing law, what options are there? Well, one option would be to create a public bank for your municipality, like North Dakota did 94 years ago. Their public bank was completely unaffected by the Wall Street bank collapses and financial trials back in 2008, and in fact, boasted one of their largest profits ever while mighty global financial institutions fell. The Bank of North Dakota, which treats its public funds as a utility rather than a speculative fund to gamble for profits, has a simple purpose: to preserve and protect its assets while investing in local priorities instead of non-local international corporations. It is completely independent of global banker greed and risky behaviors. Its money cannot be confiscated.
We're making the argument that the biggest banks on Wall Street really aren't safe, that they've got so much exposure in derivatives and who knows what else, they're in danger of going down and taking depositors with them. We think money is much safer closer to home. It's also more productively used. All the money Philadelphia has on deposit, let's say Wells Fargo, that money's not being put to work in Philadelphia. Let's put the money locally where it can be put to use in Philadelphia.
Public officials need to be clear about this risk. While the prospect of fund confiscation sounds startling, it is nonetheless true that the risk is not only there, it is promised to take place if such bank failures occur once again. And you're probably aware that such failures are expected by many, if not most, financial observers. This is your moment, a time to step up to the plate, look around at the environment and the financial players pitted against you, and to act prudently in the interests of your community. The era of blind trust in the institutions of global finance is over. Either leave your public money in the hands of proven gamblers with the promise that it will be confiscated when more bad deals go down. While the prospect of fund confiscation sounds startling, it is nonetheless true that the risk is not only there, it is promised to take place if such bank failures occur once again. And you're probably aware that such failures are expected by many, if not most, financial observers.
David goes into his credit union, got some checks, got some cash, and makes a deposit. And no problem. How are you, Dave? How's it going? Effective October 1st at the credit union. He asked me not to give the credit union here away in Southern California, but as of October 1st, 2022, they're putting holds on all deposits, including cash. How insane is that? How absolutely, utterly ridiculous is that? So, now, what's the hold? He put $2,000 in. They're going to give him half of it tomorrow, not immediate, and the other half the following day. Now, you can sit there and people are going to say, this guy's a deadbeat. He doesn't pay his bills. He's obviously got issues. No, guys. The banks have issues right now. The credit unions.
This is Dabu 7. It looks like we have a massive outage. A major U.S. bank now hit by this nationwide outage. Users reporting issues with accessing their savings accounts. And other issues here as the bank's website shows an error message. They say that we've encountered an issue and are working to fix that issue. Right now, no other details have been provided. They're telling customers check back on the website, 10 to 15 minutes from the time people are contacting them. It's still not giving any updated information. People are still not able to access their money. They say if you need further assistance, please call customer service at 1-800-950-5114. Down detector. It shows issues hitting around 10 a.m. Eastern with credit cards and mobile banking cited by users as not working. So credit cards, access to savings accounts, regular banking accounts, all that, being able to get money out. They're saying there's a whole list of issues on Down Detector. Maybe you guys are having issues. Let me know in the comments section. Try to keep track of this. Again, this is Citibank, major U.S. bank with 200 million Americans using it, going through a nationwide outage. I've been waiting and watching to see if something like this kicks off because I feel a series of events like this connected to banks is going to freeze them up. It is going to be a huge event that's going to try to convert everybody over to the wallets that they have sitting there waiting for them. They just need the event. And that event would be holding the dollar hostage in bank accounts. One way or another. Cyber attack, glitches. Just keep that in mind. We've got this massive outage here at Citi.
The money people are in charge. Anybody that thinks they have a government of we the people, they're still being taught in kindergarten to K-12 and graduate school. That's who's in control of the government.
You made headlines with this statement. The Fed will seize all your money. How?
Again, they're going to do anything they can to control our lives. Look what's going on with the interest rates, right? What's the inflation rate? Oh, it hit 10.7%. You're still deep in negative territory. So in the United States, what do you have? You have inflation rate, it's 7.1, and you have a 4.5, 5. You're still in negative territory. So here's what they're going to do. This is going to be the year we believe that we're going to start seeing going from dirty cash to digital trash. They're going to make up something new. And that's the way they're going to get out of this thing. Look at the United States. Just passed a $1.7 trillion budget when you have a $30.1 trillion deficit? They're going to make something up. Here, the Russians just hacked our banking system. You can't get your money out. But don't worry about it. We're coming up with a new currency. They'll make up anything. Oh, going back to, I said, when all else fails, they take you to war. The guy that was the president, FDR. Oh, that's the guy. You don't own gold anymore. Bring your gold into us, or else you go to jail. They'll make up anything. And I believe this is going to be the year where there's going to be a big push toward a digital currency,
So
and that's the way the Fed's going to get us.
This is the year that the road begins towards a central bank digital currency.
Yep.
In the U.S.
Matter of fact, that's the way we see it happening, and it's going to go like that, like that, like that. And we're doing this to protect you, so we can know every penny that you spent, where you spent it, what you spent it on, so we can get the tax money, because we're politicians and we don't work a day in our lives, and we need your money and all the little clowns that we call public servants that work for us, that do what we tell them to do, so we can keep them paid, so we get all your money. That's where this thing is going. And I say to people, if you're keeping money in the bank, why are you keeping it there?
This is Dabu7. We have widespread reports now of Bank of America being down. People are having trouble accessing their bank accounts. If they do get in, they're seeing a bunch of zeros. Everything's zeroed out. They cannot access their money. Some people starting to freak out with everything going on, with people rushing out to clear the shelves to get supplies and all this other stuff. Now the bank's starting to freeze up, so to speak. This isn't the first bank to do this. And they did not immediately respond with a comment when they were asked, how long should people expect to see this go on for? But some people saying, I've got over $20,000 in an account here, and it's showing all zero balances, just freaking people out. And why wouldn't it, when you've got everything you've worked for and earned in a bank, and this happens? I expect more of this, and I've been warning people that something of this magnitude is going to happen large scale. It's going to involve more than just one bank. It's going to be across the board. And this is what they're going to use to usher in their CBDC. There's also reports now of T-Mobile spiking. It was just the Verizon situation the other day. Let's not forget the big IT glitch that took everything down not too long ago as well. This thing is well primed for a big event. I think all of you know it. So just buckle up, be prepared. This is the latest. I'll update on X or on Twitter as I come across more. If you're experiencing any troubles out there, leave a comment below and join me on the live stream.
CBA. And I went to withdraw $8,500. The lady at the teller goes, what's the purpose of your withdrawal? I said, I'm building. And she goes, okay, fine. She gave me my money and I go, next week I want to withdraw another $20,000 cash. And she goes, okay, you can place the order, because I know larger amounts of cash withdrawals you need to order in advance. And she goes, again, what's the purpose of your withdrawal? I go, I'm building. And she goes, okay, do you have invoices? I go, no, I don't have invoices because I haven't paid them, obviously, but I have quotes. And she goes, okay, make sure you bring your quotes. And I was like, fine dining restaurant, buy myself Louboutins and a Chanel bag. And, spend all my money, gamble it away. Okay, it's my money, I can do whatever I want. And then she looks at the lady next to her at the teller, and then that lady, she steps in and she goes, we wouldn't be able to give you $10,000 if you were going to the casino. I go, why not? And she goes, there's a lot of scams out there and we just need to protect you from being reckless. I was just dumbfounded. I was like, excuse me? I go, it's my money. I can flush it down the toilet if I like. I go, so what's the limit? What's the maximum I can withdraw without proof and without invoices or whatever? And she goes, well, you can withdraw $2,000 at the ATM and $2,000 at a teller. So maximum $4,000 a day, no questions asked. Okay, so anything over $4,000, they need a reason. I go, well, I've given you a reason. I'm building. And she goes, yeah, but that large amount of money, $20,000, we're going to need invoices or quotes or proof. I was just, I go, well, what if I just want to buy a Rolex? And she goes, well, we need the invoice. I go, well, the freaking Rolex is not going to give me an invoice if I haven't purchased it. I was like, what? And she goes, and the guy behind me, who was just shaking his head, I was in disbelief. I was like, because I haven't withdrawn money from the bank in a long time, right? I've not had to use that much cash in a long time, so I haven't withdrawn any money. And so I was like, when did this new rule come out? And I go, is this just CBA? And she goes, no, this is all banks. I mean, this is such a joke. Why are the banks holding our money hostage? It's our hard-earned money. Why do we?
I want to bring it home with this. So for the folks at home who are looking at their bank accounts, looking at the fiat system, getting worried, right? If they're considering moving their assets outside of the bank, you know, what discussions should they be having with themselves? How do you know if you're ready to make that move? Because it can be scary, right? We've been accustomed to the banking system our whole lives. Like, what do you mean you don't have money in the bank, right? It's a scary shift.
Well, from a legal perspective, cash in the bank, you have a claim on the bank. So from a legal position, cash in the bank is risky, especially when we'll get bail-ins. If we get a next crisis and the financial system has to be, refinanced, you could have bail-ins like we've seen in Cyprus, and everything over 100K, you know, it could be gone. So I always advise people take money out of the system and invest it in things which are safe. If you invest money in real estate, the money's out of the system, the financial system, but it's in a very tangible, very, very safe asset. You can also take money out of the system by buying physical gold or silver and storing it in privately owned vaults. I started a company like that myself in 2008. But you can also buy Bitcoin, and Bitcoin, you can take your Bitcoin offline and put it in cold storage. So then your money is also out the normal structures, but there can be a risk because I expect more financial repression from the governments. I think the government one day might choose to close the on and off ramps to crypto, to Bitcoin, because there will be a huge fight between Bitcoin and the fiat system, especially once they roll out the central bank digital currencies. And so don't put all your eggs into one crypto basket. But I always have this model: it's 25% real estate, 25% in stocks, 25% in physical gold and silver, and then 25% there used to be cash, but now I put that in Bitcoin.
And I agree with you on that diversification front. It's just that Bitcoin maximalists would argue, well, why would you own AOL if you could just own Amazon?
Yeah, but when you get greedy and put all your eggs in one basket, you know, if you study history, what were the worst mistakes? People becoming greedy, putting all their eggs in one basket, and the basket then fell.
Good thoughts, and always a fantastic conversation with you, Willem. Come back anytime.
Hi everybody, welcome. Today I have Ann Vandersteel with me today, and we are back. Looks like we're in a dungeon, but we are at a conference, and we've been learning about how to restore the republic and what that means. And you travel around the country for a long time, fighting for people's rights and standing up for what you believe in, and speaking the truth with world leaders like Flynn and others. Tell me what you've been learning here. We're at, outside of Dallas, and what have you learned, and what have you changed about your status?
Well, first of all, thank you for the opportunity to speak to your audience, Rosie. This is a journey. This is about really uncovering what we didn't know that we have been born into and has been covered up and obfuscated because they didn't want us to know the truth about who we really are as free people. We all think because we have, quotes, a constitution and we're supposed to be a constitutional republic that we are in fact free. What we've learned through this process of becoming an American state national is that we really aren't free at all. We are debt slaves. We are slaves to every single big technology company, to big food, to big pharma, to the big military industrial complex. And our tax dollars that we're writing checks to the Internal Revenue Service isn't even chartered by our Constitution. In fact, it's a foreign corporation for which that money is going to the International Monetary Fund and the World Bank. So that money isn't even going to our U.S. Treasury, which is the Treasury of we the people. So the process of becoming an American state national, you learn that you think the status of becoming a U.S. citizen is so coveted. In fact, it really is a deprivation of your God-given rights, because in 1868, after the end of the Civil War, states that wanted to be readmitted to the Union were forced to sign and ratify a treaty, or excuse me, an amendment, the 14th Amendment, which made you a United States citizen. When they incorporated the United States in 1871, you then became part of that 10 square mile federal jurisdiction and a federal citizen, which forces you into their statutes and codes and bylaws. And we are not part of that. We are not part of a corporation. We are free people. So they stole our sovereignty, they stole our state sovereignty, and they made us all federal citizens, which exchanged our God-given rights for government privileges, which include the government liabilities to fund those privileges, i.e. the debt. So this is what you learn when you become a state national, and we have all corrected our status. At least the folks that are here are on this journey. 2.5 million Americans last year corrected their status as well. We're truly free people, and we are part of we the people. I'm no longer a United States citizen, which is now removing me from that whole debt slave society. The journey is extremely exciting, but the amount of information you learn along the way is incredible, because you get a downloaded American history documented by case law, treaties, and other examples, all very well footnoted and annotated. And this is in fact the truth of what has happened. And the story that we've been told along the way is complete fabrication, but it's to serve the cabal and the debt slave international bankers. So here's where we are today, and we're free. You and I are free. We've corrected our status. My United States government, or I should say the United States government, has reflected my status in my passport that they issued me, noting me no longer as a U.S. citizen, but as an American state national.
An American state national is very important. What I'm learning here is that basically when we're born, we're all taken in and we're given a corporation, all caps name.
Correct.
That right there is the clue that we have a CUSIP number and we're being bought and sold.
Right. Slave trade.
Yeah.
They're profiting off of our CUSIP numbers.
So we're basically being human trafficked.
Correct.
Right.
Well, we're being traded.
Sort of.
We're traded on the bond market,
Right.
which, I mean, if people have heard of PIMCO and other municipal bonds, they're worth hundreds of billions, trillions of dollars. And that money is our money. And you learn things like, if you've ever been pulled over for a traffic ticket, Rosie, that generates a case, which generates a CUSIP number and an IBAN number, and then that's sold to a bond trader and it's put on the market. And those bonds become worth tens of billions or hundreds of billions of dollars just in one bond fund. And there are thousands and thousands of these bond funds. So we're talking about trillions and trillions of dollars here. That is our money. And so you will learn how to gain access and claim your trust and get control of that. You can learn how to take dominion of all areas of the land, which is your common law, the air, the ecclesiastical or the trust law, and water, which is admiralty law. And as a U.S. citizen, you are stuck in admiralty law because they're treating you as a commercial dead entity with your all caps name, as an all caps incorporation. So only all caps entities do business in the court of admiralty law, the court of the water. We're free people now. We're on the law of the land, God's law of nature. That is the superior court. That is the superior jurisdiction, and you want to claim jurisdiction of your status and correct your status so that you can operate in that particular jurisdiction, which is what we've done. It's very exciting.
It is really exciting, and at first it's a little scary because when you hear the words, renounce citizenship, but when we learned what the word citizen meant,
municipal servant,
right?
Yeah.
So I'm not a municipal servant.
Nope.
I am a free woman.
Yes.
Basically sovereign, but we learned that sovereign citizen is an oxymoron.
Correct.
And that this isn't any type of conspiracy. This is not. I mean, they did conspire. The bankers came in and made a corporation called the United States.
Right.
And bankrupted it several times and used.
It's now called White House Inc.
Yeah.
Yeah.
White House Inc. is who is administrating that now.
That's correct.
Only corporations can do executive.
Joe Biden is the president of White House Inc. Donald Trump was the president of the United States Inc. And he bankrupted that corporation and has discharged it. And now Joe Biden, they've changed the name. And this is what corporations that bankrupt themselves do. They just, bankrupt this corporation. If you've ever been a stock investor in a corporation that went bankrupt and your stock went worthless, but somehow those same people started another company and you're like, hey, wait a minute, you just took off with my money. That's what's happening.
Yeah.
And it's happening to you, the citizen.
Which is so crazy because, people fight so hard to try to become a citizen, everything, and then to tell them, hey, so it's also just changing the diction of saying, hey, I'm correcting my status.
Right.
Now I'm a Floridian, a Pennsylvanian, just like the founding fathers.
Correct.
So we do have a United States passport, but we have, I believe, limited diplomatic immunity,
Correct.
Something like that, and it looks a little differently when it's scanned at the airport or anything like that.
Right.
So it is really, really exciting, and I know a lot of people have done it, and from what I'm looking at online, there's been some leaks this week. I've seen some big names that have also corrected their status that we don't know about. I'm not going to release that information right this minute, but it can be found, and we would definitely do that, in a different forum.
Can we say something? Right now at this conference, there's people with top secrets, TSSCI, top secret clearance. There's federal judges here. There's chiefs of police here. There's been CIA agents. There has been other border patrol agents. There have been, a whole bunch of other folks that are in the federal, high-level generals. I know several that have gone through this process. So this is legitimate. It is real. The conspiracy that you hear about is, of course, the disinformation people that are out there that don't want you to know about this because they want to keep you in bondage. They want to keep you paying into the system and keeping them in high cotton while the rest of us are the debt slaves. They don't want this to be undone, because if you defund the swamp by reclaiming your status and reclaiming your trust, your estate, you then defund the swamp. They no longer can access your trust, which is what we just talked about previous, about the QSIP numbers and all of that, the trillions and billions of dollars that are out there. So this is what they don't want you to know. And I'm not talking about doing this because we're going to be driving around in Maseratis. That's not the point.
No.
The point is about being free. And creators mentioned 4 times in our Founding Fathers documents. Right. This is what we're talking about here.
So talk to me about restoring the republic, because to me that is the real thing. I mean, a lot of people get into this because they come at it from different angles. They want to, alleviate some court issues that they have. They want to alleviate, tax issues, or they want to alleviate people come into learning about it for different reasons, to become free for different reasons. I personally feel like we need to restore the republic and let people know that this fraud had been perpetrated on us. Mm-hmm. We didn't even know. And now there's some high level people getting involved, and now people are starting to wake up. It really is like the Great Awakening is happening because it's exponential now.
It is exponential. And the key to restore the republic is just in those words. We are not a constitutional republic right now. We have deteriorated past democracy. And if you look at everything that's happening right now today, the show that we see going on with, Joe Biden printing fiat currency to the billions of dollars into Ukraine, to a Nazi president right now, somebody who is basically installed, part of the regime they installed before they put Poroshenko in there. Look at what's going on around the world. This is not honoring anybody that's the citizens of the world, the free people of the world. This is honoring themselves. So how do you have a republic when you don't have representation of the people, by the people, for the people, which is what a republic is? When you and I have no say whatsoever about the money that's getting printed and shipped all over the world, about leaving $85 billion in Afghanistan, about think of all the events that we've learned about, 9/11. We understand that was about hiding the fact that they wanted that gold below the basements in the World Trade Center. There's just the list goes on. Were there really weapons of mass destruction in Iraq? We know that's to be false too. So there's so much more that we are now uncovering. Look at the medical fraud. Look at the fact they made up COVID. Look at the fact they've injected people with bioweapons that are making people sick around the world. This is all about perpetrating in their control, depopulation agendas they put out in plain sight for the world to see. Look at what the Georgia Guidestone said. Now, isn't that interesting? We've seen the Guidestones crumble. We've seen an obelisk at the Vatican, an obelisk in Asia. We've seen some pretty significant things. So this war that is happening right now is happening in real time. So if we're going to restore the republic, we're going to do it because we the people are reconstituting it, which is what our Founding Fathers documents clearly say. When in times of the government of tyranny, it is time for the people to either alter or abolish. We have got to alter and or abolish what we have in front of us right now and restore our republic so we have government of, by, and for the people.
There have to be enough of us, that's the 100 monkey theory, there have to be enough of us stand up. We either hang together or we're going to hang separately. I mean, when I found out that the city had a Dun & Bradstreet number, and I saw them for myself, and the court is a for-profit entity with a Dun & Bradstreet number. Who would have believed that?
Well, think about this. If you've ever lived around the country, as I have, I've lived in and out of municipalities. I've lived in and out of counties that were either incorporated or unincorporated. Mm-hmm. I never gave it a second thought. It was just like, that's the way it is. But when you stop and you go, well, what does that really mean? Why would it be incorporated? Well, anytime if you're a business owner and you set up a corporation, it's what? To have a liability shield to protect you from your business doing something onerous on somebody else. Why would government incorporate itself? To protect themselves and give themselves a liability shield to protect them from us, we the people. So the government is completely set up to make sure that no matter what they do, they are not accountable. And we're going to remove that liability shield. We're going to unincorporate government because government is you and me, the people. And if we have to be held accountable, that's how the whole system is designed. It's a check and balance system, so that way we don't go running amok and making policies and mandates and forcing needles in people's arms. Take the needle or you lose the job.
Right.
This is what has gone so horribly wrong in our country, and not only here but around the world.
Briefly talk about that.
I'm a Floridian, you're a Floridian.
Right.
Thank goodness for that. We have the best governor going right now in the 50 states. So I do believe that it's incumbent upon us. Now, Florida is trying to stand up a state assembly to run in parallel with the corporate government of Florida, the all-cap state of Florida, corporation government, that Governor DeSantis is an employee, a corporate employee as governor. He's pretending to be the governor. Mm-hmm. He's not of the people because he's a for-profit corporation governor, but he acts as a governor of the people in the sense that he's doing less harm to us than, say, a for-profit corporation would be, as we learned with Big Pharma, the big for-profit corporations, the Big Pharma, the CDC, the NIH, the FDA. They've all done massive harm to us.
Right.
So standing up a state assembly and running in parallel, eventually we will reclaim jurisdiction over the state of the people, by the people, for the people. And just like I tell people all the time, the district of corruption, the dumpster fire in DC is irrelevant. We need to stop listening to those people. We need to ignore them and say, take your mandates and shove it where the sun don't shine. Yeah. And we need to reconstitute our local government. And most importantly, that's what you've got to start. As General Flynn always says, right. Local action has national impact.
Right.
Now, at the moment, people will go into a court and they'll stand up and they say, I'm the living man. And they can't understand why they don't get anywhere.
Right.
The reason is because their court system does not recognize the living man. It only recognizes the fiction. So how does that come about? Most people think that the birth certificate is a fraudulent document. It's not. It's absolutely legal. But what they do with it is unlawful. Not illegal, unlawful. So when a baby's created, when it's in the womb, you have the one product. It's all the same DNA, the placenta, the umbilical cord, the baby. It's all the one DNA, and that's come from the fertilized egg. It's different DNA to the mother. When it's in the womb, the baby is the beneficiary of everything through the placenta.
Right.
Okay, this is where we start to get these words coming through. The baby is the beneficiary of everything through the placenta. When the baby is born, what normally happens, and this is why they try to get births in hospital, is they cut the umbilical cord. Now, when you have a product and you cut it in half, that's called severance. Mm. And when severance happens, you automatically create a trust. Okay, so that's where the trusts come in, because now we've got two separate properties. The mother claims ownership of the baby. Most of you might know that how did Adam get dominion over all the animals on the planet? By naming them. So the mother, by naming her baby, claims dominion over it. Now, here's one I prepared earlier. Okay, this is Mary Jane. Okay,
is that your baby? Is that your little baby?
Well, it's a little toy that I have here to help people realise the difference. So right. here's Mary Jane. Okay? Yep. Now, Mary Jane that's an appellation. It's not a name. It's that by which someone is called.
Yes.
Okay. So Mary Jane's the appellation, and she is under the dominion of her mother. Okay. So we'll put Mary Jane aside for a minute. The next thing that the mother has to do is she has to birth the placenta.
Yeah.
Not born the placenta, birth the placenta. And the placenta is then abandoned by the mother in most cases, except for people who have lotus births and that, but that's a whole different story. Once the placenta has been abandoned, the state claims it under salvage laws, the laws of the sea. It salvages the placenta and it weighs the placenta because the placenta is worth its weight in gold. Having claimed that abandoned product, they then name it. Because by naming it, they claim ownership and dominion. So here's the placenta. It's on paper. It's what some people call the straw man. I don't like that term because it confuses people. What's that mean? This is a stick figure on a piece of paper. That's what they've created. And the names that they give it, as you can see up here, is Mary Jane Smith in all lowercase letters, Mary Jane Smith, Smith in capital letters, Mary Jane Smith all in capital letters, and then Smith, comma, Mary Jane. So what they've done is they have added a surname. A surname is not a legal name. It is something that qualifies you as being a fictional entity. This is why, you know, when you introduced me, and beforehand I said, I don't have a surname.
Yes, I did ask.
Yeah, because I'm not a fiction.
Right.
So anyone who uses their surname, there is a way that you can write this, but anyone who uses their surname, especially in capital letters, even in lowercase letters, is playing the role of the fiction.
Yeah.
And that's what the state controls.
I just wanted to, I just want to add a little thing here. When my partner Julia had her youngest son, she asked if she could have the placenta in the hospital because she didn't want to go to hospital, but she had to have a cesarean, which seems to be the popular thing, and I think that's pushed on people, of course. Yeah. And she was told, no, you can't have it, which is very strange. Which is very strange, as you know, it's part of her body, and they
absolutely is.
And I think that's, you know, that's policy that hospitals will say if anybody even asks for it, which of course is very rare.
Well, I think that's a great indication of how corrupt the system is, because they're now, by stealing the placenta, they create these trust accounts. Yeah. And so what they've created is they've created a product which they've weighed, so it's worth its weight in gold, and the average weight of a baby now, I think it's, you know, slightly under, but let's say it's 10 kilos. And the average price of gold in Australia here is $3,000 an ounce, which means the placenta is worth $480,000.
Right.
So now they've got something they can trade on the stock market.
Now, just before we go, I've got another. I don't mean to interject all the time.
No, please do.
But just one other thing that went through my mind. Oh, now is it gone? What's it to do with the? It'll come back to me. It was just an interesting point, but it's gone. Yeah, don't worry.
It'll jump back in, and when it jumps back in, just jump back in.
Yeah, okay.
So these three names, why do they create these three different names? And they're Capitis, Maximus, and Dominicus, and there's all these names that go with it, which means they are diminishing your rights with each of these levels. And they create these three different trust accounts, which are the Sedicay V trusts, to trade in the three different jurisdictions of land, air, and water. L-A-W, law. That's where law comes from. It's the jurisdictions that they trade your trust account in. Now, they have to make you, the living man, or woman in the case, they have to make you the beneficiary of these trust accounts because you were the beneficiary in the womb, and they can't change that.
Right. Now, that's interesting because I've often tried to wrestle, why is it that we are I know that we are the beneficiary, but why? But so you've answered that question. That is very, you've ticked another little box. Thank you.
Beautiful. Now, the other thing people say is that, oh, I'm the benefactor. I said, well, wait a minute. You can't be the benefactor and the beneficiary, can you? Who created the baby? Who created the placenta? Well, it comes from the DNA. No, it actually comes from the DNA of the grandmother, the maternal mother, because when the mother is born, her eggs are already there.
Oh, yes, I've heard this. Yes, that's right.
So the benefactors, the ones who create the placenta, is the maternal grandmother and the father. They're the ones who, by the act of God, created the placenta. But the state has claimed ownership of it, so they act as a benefactor as well. Now, what does the benefactor do? It can put money into the account. It can put assets into the account. And there's already, when you're first born, there's already 480 grand in there. That's a nice little start for it. Every time they get you into school or they employ you, more money goes into this account. Okay, because they're trading it, so its value increases. If you move overseas, the stock is traded to that country. And we're talking about slavery. Slavery wasn't abolished. It was transformed into the paper fiction world through being traded. Now, a lot of people are of the belief that the money in these accounts is their money and that they can get it. So I use this analogy. If your grandmother had a will and she puts all of her money into her will and makes you the beneficiary, you can't just go in and say, oh, I want all that money because it's mine, because grandma's not dead yet.
Right.
It's only once grandma is dead that you get paid the money under probate law, under trust law, and you become as the sole beneficiary. And they use these tricks on words, the sole beneficiary, S-O-L-E, and also the S-O-U-L beneficiary. They play with words in the meaning. And that brings us to a really interesting point, because we have an affidavit here, which we call the Affidavit of Freedom, which we put into their system. The affidavit, if unrebutted, is the most powerful document in the commerce and trade system, which is what they operate under. So we want to put an affidavit into their system that they can't rebut. So we create an affidavit from the position of the soul, because it's the one that's controlling the living body. The soul, through the living body, creates an affidavit that says, I am not the fiction.
Right.
I am not the trust account. So when this affidavit is then served on them, and they've got 28 days to challenge it, which they won't because they can't, it defines the fact that there is a difference between the living man and the fiction. If you don't have that affidavit, you don't exist in their system. The only thing that exists in their system is Mary Jane Smith, is the fiction. So if people go into a court and they stand up and they say, I'm the living woman, Mary Jane, the court says, you don't exist. Well, you're wasting my time. And they get thrown out. Now, what's really important is understanding a thing called the unum sanctum. Now, in the UK, in all the countries there, most people are very aware of a thing called the Magna Carta.
Yeah.
And they use it often as the basis for all of their arguments of common law. But let's talk about what the Magna Carta really was. The Magna Carta was the barons of the country refusing to pay the rentals to the Catholic Church through King John, because everything was run by the Catholics at that time. All of England, most of Wales was all run by the Catholic Church. Now, this Magna Carta was the barons trying to not pay money to the Catholic Church, but still keep all their peasants and servants poor. So let's understand, the Magna Carta was about keeping the rich rich and keeping the poor poor. Now, King John said, I'm not going to sign that because I'll get in trouble with the Pope. He's going to excommunicate me. So they held a knife to his head and said, mate, you sign it or we're going to top you. So he signed it. Well, under contract law, that means the Magna Carta is not worth the paper it's written on. And in any case, the Pope at the time rebutted it. Said, no, it's gone. So they tried again, I think, was it 80 years later, and they did Mark II?
Yeah, something like that.
But here's where it gets interesting, because Pope Boniface, I think it was the 8th, in 1302, said, I've had enough of this BS. I'm going to issue a papal bull, which is an order from the highest level of the Catholic Church that applies to everyone. And in that papal bull, called the Unum Sanctum, he claimed every soul on the planet for the Catholic Church.
Right.
Now, under their operations, there's a little thing called a maxim of law, and you might have run across those, there's heaps of them.
Yeah.
And there's one that says, he who does not deny admits.
Right. So if you haven't pushed back against the Una Sanctum and said, actually, mate, that soul is not yours, then they, by default, because everything's run by presumptions and assumptions.
Exactly, absolutely. So if you haven't done an affidavit from your soul rebutting the Unum Sanctum, no matter what you say as the living man or living woman, or no matter what you do, the Vatican still owns your soul.
Right.
So that's the first thing you have to do to set your living man or woman free, is set your soul free. It's not good enough to say, well, I don't agree with that. I don't say that the Vatican owns my soul. But see, the Vatican operates and understands how higher levels of consciousness work. Most people know that the Vatican works. It's a Satan worshipping organization. Now, that might upset a lot of people, but that's the truth about where it comes from. So we've got this situation that we have to rebut that first and foremost if we want to be free. And that's where the affidavit becomes really, really important. So that gives a little bit of background about how we have to try and deal with this, because they've been perpetrating this system on us. It actually goes back to ancient Egypt, and I do a lot of stuff about ancient Egypt, but that principle comes through, and we've been lied to about so many things. This is just another perpetuation of the lie. Now, when you are made the beneficiary, they don't tell you all of that. Because they work on this principle. Well, we won't tell you. When you die, there's no one to make a claim on the trust account. Therefore, it all comes back to the state after 6 months.
Meanwhile, in your life, you've because you are alive and it's been on the stock market and what have you and traded, it's made an absolute fortune, of which your sweat equity and your living has actually created for them.
Even when you get paid, what do you call social benefits over there in the UK?
Yeah, things like universal credits and things like that. Universal benefit.
No. When the government pays you because you're
social
on the dole.
security.
Social security payments and pensions.
Yeah.
All of the money that you get paid is taken out of that trust account. So they take out a little bit of the interest payment that they're making and they give it to you as a payment. It doesn't come out of taxation. It doesn't come out of the coffers that are going in. They're actually taking it out of your own beneficiary trust account and giving it to you because you're the beneficiary, so they can do that. And here's how they do it. The trust account has no executor office established, because the only one who can establish the office of the executor is the beneficiary. But the beneficiary doesn't even know about this.
Right.
So they don't set up this office. So think about it, it's a lolly shop and there's no one running the shop. So the government, which is a private organisation, comes in and you authorise it through your naivety to make deals in the shop. But those deals are not to your advantage, they're to your disadvantage. So it works as what's called an executor de son tort.
Mm.
And it does all of these bits and pieces. Because there's no one in the shop, it can do that. The minute you, as the living man or the living woman, express your right to establish the office of the executor, they can't do it anymore. Now we're under trust law, and trust law is the highest law that exists. It's higher than government, parliament, legislations, higher than constitutions, it's the highest law, is trust law. You then, in the capacity as the executor of the trust account, are the highest judge there exists. You can pass orders, you can increase your payments, you can buy a house under the name of the trust. You've got all these powers, but you're not told about it because they want to keep controlling you. And the way they control you is through the banks, because the banks are the ones who run everything. The governments are the puppets. They are a foreign organisation. Probably there in the UK, they are foreign because they exist in the City of London.
Yes.
And I think you're probably all aware that the City of London is not part of the UK.
That's right.
It's one of the three countries that are owned by the Illuminati, being the Vatican, Washington, D.C., and London. And there's actually a fourth one, which is Christchurch in New Zealand, that most people don't know about it. That's why a lot of these new policies are being implemented in New Zealand, because of the timeline that they could get put in first. So you've got this situation where you've got a foreign organisation. Now here in Australia, we have rates through our councils. Now the councils, they've had 3 referendums to try to make the councils legitimate here, and the people have been smart enough to say no. But the government went ahead in the middle of the night and registered every single council in Australia. And Australia is not the landmass. Let me just, for those of you who think Australia is this big country down under, Australia is actually a small island just off the coast of Queensland called Norfolk Island. Because when Cook and that landed here, the land was occupied. So they couldn't occupy it. So they went to Norfolk Island, which was not occupied, and they claimed it. Also the Cocos Keeling Islands and Christmas Island. And in the legislation here, it actually says Australia geographically includes Norfolk Island, Cocos Keeling Island, and Christmas Island. Now there's another maxim of law, and I never get it right. It's unius alterius est exclusio, which basically means the only thing that's included is what is after the word includes.
After the word, yes.
Is out. So
Yeah.
they tell you in their legislation that Australia is a foreign corporation offering administration on this land of Terra Australis under the banner Australia. You will find that similar things are probably happening to England, Scotland. So I did a little bit of research for you folks. You've got to start saying things like, I was born on the land originally known as Caledonia.
Really?
Yep. Where's Caledonia? What's the original land of Caledonia?
Well, there's a question that you've posed to me. I mean, I know there's the Canadolia, can't even say it now, the canal up in Scotland.
That's what Caledonia is.
Right.
Scotland was originally called Caledonia.
Caledonia.
So when you say I was born on the land originally known as Caledonia, what you're doing is you're saying I was born on a land that prior to any of these laws and rules and that being imposed. Same for England. Scotland is also Scota or Scotia. Wales is, and I never get this right, is it Cymru?
Yes, like Cymru.
Cymru is what the land was before these foreign corporations imposed on it. So what you're saying is, I wasn't born in Wales. I was born on the land originally known as Cymru. Or England was Albion.
Yeah.
Britain and Ireland was Ierne, Ierne, something. So you start to change the dialogue, and you do it on paper, and you do it through this affidavit. Then, once this affidavit's in place, it becomes your foundation stone, because you just refer back to it. Say, well, you didn't challenge it. That's the contract.
And who would you send that to? Do you file it in the courts, or you send it to the
you send it
chief?
to the head people in the court, the Chief Justice, the CEOs of the councils, the Attorney Generals or the Exchequer. You send it to all of these people who potentially can screw you over, including the CEOs of the banks.
Right.
You'll send out maybe between 10 and 15 to cover yourself. And we've had over 35,000 of them served here in Australia, and we've not had one single one challenged. Because they can't challenge them. It's impossible to challenge them.
Yeah.
No. Because the only way they could have challenged them would be to expose their own frauds.
Yes.
And they're not going to do that. So from that paperwork, and I sent you some of the other documents that we have, we then turn the tables on them. We don't fight their system. We use their system against them. And in the process of doing that, we expose the fraud, that they don't have the power. Now, we were talking earlier about you have county courts over there. If you look at the legislation for county courts, you will probably find what we have here, that the legislation is all in lowercase letters. So the county court is written in lowercase letters. But if you get a notice from the county court will be in capital letters. And if you look up, in Australia, it's called an ABN number, which is the business number of the corporation. I can't remember what they're called in the UK.
May well be a Dun and Bradstreet number.
Yeah. So all of those so-called courts are private organisations overseas.
Yeah.
And I just want to mention, while I think of it, is our council rates that people pay here, and it's a big scam. There is not 1 cent of council rates. In the UK, it would be council taxes. There is not 1 cent that goes to the people, that goes to fixing the roads, that goes to the kindergarten, that goes to do all of these things. Every single cent of it goes overseas. Every single cent of it. Guess where it goes?
To the Vatican?
Yes. 75% of it goes to the Vatican. Guess where most of the rest of it goes?
Well, to the bankers, I suppose.
No. Spain.
Oh, of course. España. Why else would it not go to Spain? Why Spain?
Because in the 1500s with Pope Alexander, the Spanish were the ones who took control of all of this part of it. That's why the money goes to Spain.
Right, because there were 2 popes at one time.
Yeah. It's all business, and it all goes back, that old saying, all roads lead to Rome?
Yes.
Boy, do they ever. So people get screwed left, right and centre. Now, most of your people there in the UK who have a job don't have a job. Guess who has the job?
The straw man, the legal fiction.
The legal fiction does. Why? Because it's got the surname. And because it has the surname, who owns the surname?
The state do. Or
the
Crown.
State do. Therefore, they divert money that you have earned into the trust account for their own benefit. People get a bank loan to buy a house, thinking that they are owning the house. But what name are they purchasing it in?
The legal fiction.
The legal fiction name. So the legal fiction owns the house. Now, here's the thing. When the legal fiction creates the contract, they take the money out of the trust account and then they get you to pay them twice. They double dip, plus interest, and at the end of the day, you own nothing. Remember when they said you will own nothing and you will be happy? They were thumbing their nose at you because you already own nothing.
Yes. And you already seem happy because you don't know.
Because you don't know. Yeah. So we have to turn this around and start raising the issues of fraud by the banks, fraud by the councils, and making them accountable back under the system. Now, this comes back to common law, which is case law, but it's run by the people, not by the courts. Now, once you've done your affidavit, you can start running your own courts. Here's one of the problems with the common law system in the UK. You haven't done your affidavit. You're still a citizen of the corporation. If you work for McDonald's, you can't tell the bosses at McDonald's how to run the company. You have to come from outside. So the quicker you guys can separate yourself from the system by putting this simple document into the system, now you can start empowering yourself, running your own courts properly. And remember, the court of the living man is the highest court there is.
Right here, the affidavit of sovereignty. Now, this particular document has changed over time. This is the original that you're looking at right now. A lot of people changed it to affidavit of truth because the powers that be demonized the word sovereignty, even though it is quite clear within applicable law that the people are sovereign. But somehow, some way, so that's why they don't call you sovereign. They call you a sovereign citizen. They've coined a new phrase calling you a sovereign citizen. They want to stay away from this word sovereign because they know it's too many sites in the law books that show that the people are sovereign. So they made up some Jedi mind trick type thing that they're playing on everybody by calling you a sovereign citizen. And it's a lot of simple people, simple-minded people out there that seem to fall for it. Even among the guru circles, you'll catch them using this word sovereign citizen. So, I have people coming on my videos saying, all this is dumb. All you got to do is stop using their stuff, and basically just, go completely private. And I understand that it is the right thing. You're supposed to just completely eschew any and all benefits and privileges these people are offering you, even the use of Federal Reserve notes, as you've seen in John Wick, where he burned all the Federal Reserve notes. John Wick is a very good movie to watch if you really want to understand the private side and just pay attention. Watch it as an education and not just some form of, entertainment for some sort of entertainment value. But yeah, I understand, what truly being completely private is. You're not on these internets, you're not any of those things. You're completely 100% private. You're not using any of the benefits and privileges offered by the federal government. Okay, but there's a thing called minimum contacts. And that is what we are discussing today in this document, the Affidavit of Sovereignty. This particular document addresses the minimum contacts. Basically, what activity have you been engaging in that allows the government to have an operational presumption that they have authority over you? Chances are you've been engaged in some sort of regulated activity that comes under their authority, or you've contracted with them in some kind of way. A lot of people have accused, say, you guys don't want to pay any taxes. Well, the thing about it is there's something called tax evasion and tax avoidance. Okay, tax avoidance is lawful. There is no law that will prevent you from arranging your affairs in such a way where you don't have to pay taxes. That's every man's right. It is perfectly lawful for a man to arrange his affairs in such a way where he does not incur a tax. Let's go over this document. I'm going to read the document and then kind of narrate it a little bit. It kind of narrates itself because it explains everything. It gets into each of the minimum contacts and then actually explains why it is that you are, pointing this out. You should make this document your own, meaning that don't copy it word for word. Learn there are spelling errors in it and everything, but you can make it your own. Massage it. That's what a lot of people did, who started making it into an affidavit of truth, because they allow these people to scare them using sovereignty. It's amazing. I saw a comment. Somebody said, should we be using the word sovereignty since they put them on the terrorist list? They put sovereign citizens on the terrorist list. They didn't put sovereigns on the terrorist list. Okay, so without further ado, let's get into it. The affidavit of sovereignty. Affidavit of sovereignty. Equality under the law is paramount and mandatory by law. I, John Henry Doe, a titled sovereign, hereby declare that I am competent to manage all my own affairs. All other entities are incompetent to manage any of my affairs and are hereby fired. A sovereign cannot be tried in their own court. Consistent with the eternal tradition of natural common law, unless I have harmed or violated someone or their property, I have committed no crime and am therefore not subject to any penalty. Thus be it known to all, in the nature of UCC 1-207, that I reserve my natural common law right not to be compelled to perform under any contract that I did not enter into knowingly, voluntarily, and intentionally. And furthermore, I do not accept the liability associated with the compelled and pretended benefit of any hidden or unrevealed contract or commercial agreement. As such, the hidden or unrevealed contracts that supposedly create obligations to perform for persons of subject status are inapplicable to me and are null and void. If I have participated in any of the supposed benefits associated with these hidden contracts, I've done so under duress, for lack of any other practical alternative. Any such participation does not constitute acceptance in contract law, because of the absence of full disclosure of any valid offer and voluntary consent without misrepresentation or coercion under contract law. Without a valid voluntary offer and acceptance knowingly entered into by both parties, there is no meeting of minds and therefore no valid contract. Any supposed contract is therefore void ab initio. Typical examples of such compelled and pretended benefits are: number 1, the birth certificate. The fact that a birth certificate was granted to me by a local hospital or government agency when I entered this world is irrelevant to my sovereignty. No status, high or low, can be assigned to another person through a piece of paper without the recipient's full knowledge and consent. Therefore, such a piece of paper provides only hearsay, date, and place information only. It indicates nothing about jurisdiction, nothing about property ownership, nothing about rights, and nothing about subject status. The only documents that can have any legal meaning as it concerns my status in society are those which I have signed as an adult with full knowledge and consent, free from misrepresentation or coercion of any kind. My birth certificates, warehouse receipts, have been redeemed, accepted for value in a UCC-1 filing signed on such and such date, the date of your UCC-1 filing, received and recorded by either the Secretary of State or the local county clerk's office, whichever does it in your state, for the Secretary of State on the date of the filing, and then, of course, the filing number, which is your UCC filing number that they place on the document. And therefore, none hold any claim to either my straw man nor to my natural self. Number 2, the use of an identification number from a government agency. The number, normally assigned to persons of subject status, I use exceptionally under duress, only because of the extreme inconvenience of operating without one in today's marketplace, where it is requested by banks, employers, lenders, and many other government agencies and businesses. My reason for using it is not because I wish to participate in the system, as I do not wish to participate. Let it be known that I use the number assigned to me for information only, if at all. Number 3, the use of fiat currency to discharge my debts. I have used these only because in this country there is no other widely recognized currency. Number 4, the use of a bank account with my signature on the bank signature card. If there is any hidden contract behind the bank signature card, my signature thereon gives no validity to it. The signature is only for verification of identity. I cannot be obligated to fulfill any hidden or unrevealed contract whatsoever due to the absence of full disclosure and voluntary consent. Likewise, my use of the bank account, therefore, is due to the absence of a bank not associated with the central bank system. In general, people have been prevented from issuing their own currencies, and such prevention is in violation of the national constitution. Were there an alternative, I would be happy to use it. To not use any bank at all is impossible or very difficult, as everyone knows, in today's marketplace. Number 5, past tax returns filed. Any tax returns I may have filed in the past were filed due to the dishonest atmosphere of fear and intimidation created by the tax collector and the local assessor's offices, not because there's any law requiring me to do so. Once I discovered the tax agencies are lying to the public, I have felt it is my responsible duty to society to terminate my voluntary participation. Because such returns were filed under threat, duress, and coercion, TDC, and no two-way contract was ever signed with full disclosure, there is nothing in any past filing of returns that created any valid contract. Therefore, no legal obligation on my part was ever created. Number 6, the use of a driver's license. As a free sovereign, there is no legal requirement for me to have such a license for traveling in my car, as technically the unrevealed legal purpose of driver's licenses is commercial in nature. Since I don't carry passengers or freight for hire, there is no law requiring me to have a license to travel for my own pleasure and that of my family and friends. However, because of the lack of education of police officers on this matter, should I be stopped for any reason and found to be without a license, it is likely I would be harassed. Therefore, under duress, I carry a license to avoid extreme inconvenience. Number 7, state plates on my car. Similarly, even though technically my car does not fit the legal definition of a motor vehicle, which is used for commercial purposes, nevertheless, I have registered it with the state and carry the state plates on it, because to have any other plates or no plates at all causes me the risk of police officer harassment and extreme inconvenience. Number 8, declaration of citizenship. Any document I have ever signed in which I answered yes to the question, "Are you a U.S. citizen?" cannot be used to compromise my status as a sovereign nor obligate me to perform in any manner. This is because without full written disclosure of the definition and consequences of such supposed citizenship provided in a document bearing my signature given freely without misrepresentation or coercion, there can be no legally binding contract. I make no allegiance to any earthly government. I am neutral to all. Number 9, past voter registration. Similarly, since no obligation to perform in any manner was ever revealed in print as part of the requirements for the supposed privilege to vote for government officials, any such previous registration on my part cannot be legal evidence of any obligation to perform. Likewise, I have granted no jurisdiction over me to any political office. It is my inherent right to vote on elections or issues that I feel affect all society, not because I need anyone to rule over me. On the contrary, I have used the voting process only to instruct my public servants what a citizen and sovereign would like done. Number 10, marriage license. The acquisition of a marriage license is now being revealed as being necessary only for slaves. The act of a sovereign, such as myself, obtaining such a license through social custom and ignorance of law has no legal effect in changing my status. This is because any such change in status, if any may be supposed to occur, could only happen through a hidden and unrevealed contract or statute. Since no hidden, unrevealed, and undisclosed information, if it exists, can be lawfully held to be binding, it is null and void. Number 11, children in public school. The attendance of my children in government-supported public schools or government-controlled private schools does not create any legal tax obligation for me or any other legal obligation because I never signed a contract agreeing to such obligation for the supposed privilege of public school attendance. If any of my children have attended government-supported public or controlled private schools, such was done under duress and not out of free will. Be it known that I regard compulsory state education as a violation of the natural and universal common law of freedom of choice. Number 12, use of semantics. There are some immature people with mental imbalances, such as the craving to dominate over other people, who masquerade as government. Just because they alter definition of words in the law books to their supposed advantage doesn't mean we have to accept those definitions. The fact that they define the words person, address, mail, resident, motor vehicle, driving, passenger, employee, income, and many others in ways different from the common usage so as to be associated with a subject or slave status means nothing in real life. Because the courts have become entangled in the game of semantics, be it known to all courts and all parties that if I ever signed any document or spoke any words on record using words defined by twist in the law books different from the common usage, there can be no effect whatsoever on my sovereign status in society thereby, nor can there be created any obligation to perform in any manner by the mere use of such words. Where the meaning in the common dictionary differs from the meaning in the law dictionary, it is the meaning in the common dictionary that prevails, because it is more trustworthy. Note, such compelled and supposed benefits include, but are not limited to, the aforementioned typical examples. My use of such alleged benefits is under duress only, and is with full reservation of all my common law rights. I have waived none of my intrinsic rights and freedoms by my use thereof. Furthermore, my use of such compelled benefits may be temporary until better alternatives become available, practical, and widely recognized. Federal jurisdiction. It is further relevant to this affidavit that any violation of my rights, freedom, or property by the federal government or any agent thereof will be an illegal and unlawful excess, clearly outside the limited boundaries of federal jurisdiction. My understanding is that the jurisdiction of the U.S. government is defined by Article 1, Section 8, Clause 17 of the U.S. Constitution, quoted as follows. The Congress shall have the power to exercise exclusive legislation in all cases whatsoever over such a district, not exceeding 10 miles square, as may, by cession of particular states and the acceptance of Congress, become the seat of government of the United States, District of Columbia, and to exercise like authority over all places purchased by the consent of the legislature of the state in which the same shall be, for the erection of forts, magazines, arsenals, dockyards, and other needful buildings, and to make all laws which shall be necessary and proper for carrying into execution the foregoing powers. And Article 4, Section 3, Clause 2. The Congress shall have the power to dispose of and make all needful rules and regulations respecting the territory or other property belonging to the United States, and nothing in this Constitution shall be so construed as to prejudice any claims of the United States or of any particular state. The definition of the United States being used here then is limited to its territories. Number 1, the District of Columbia. Number 2, Commonwealth of Puerto Rico. Number 3, U.S. Virgin Islands. Number 4, Guam. Number 5, American Samoa. Number 6, Northern Mariana Islands. Number 7, Trust Territory of the Pacific Islands. Number 8, military bases within the 50 states. Number 9, federal agencies within the 50 states, including U.S. post offices. It does not include the 50 states themselves, as is confirmed by the following sites. We have in our political system a government of the United States and a government of the several states. Each one of these governments is distinct from the others, and each has citizens of its own who owe it allegiance, and whose rights within its jurisdiction it must protect. The same person may be at the same time a citizen of the United States and a citizen of a state, but his rights of citizenship under one of these governments will be different from those he has under the other. Slaughterhouse Cases, United States versus Crankshaft, Volume 92, U.S. Reporter, page 542, year 1875. The United States government is a foreign corporation with respect to a state. Volume 20, Corpus Juris Secundii, Section 1785. This is further confirmed by the following quote from the Internal Revenue Service. Federal jurisdiction includes the District of Columbia, the Commonwealth of Puerto Rico, the Virgin Islands, Guam, and American Samoa. Internal Revenue Code, Section 312E. In legal terminology, the word includes means is limited to. When referring to this district United States, the Internal Revenue Code uses the term within the United States. When referring to the 50 states, the Internal Revenue Code uses the term without the United States. Dozens, perhaps hundreds of court cases prove that federal jurisdiction is limited to the few federal territory areas above indicated. For example, in 2 Supreme Court cases, it was decided the laws of Congress in respect to those matters do not extend into the territorial limits of the states, but have force only in the District of Columbia and other places that are within the exclusive jurisdiction of the national government. Cabal versus United States, Volume 152, U.S. Reporter, page 215. We think a proper examination of this subject will show that the United States never held any municipal sovereignty, jurisdiction, or right of soil in and to the territory, of which Alabama or any of the new states were formed. Volume 44, U.S. Reporter, page 221. Because the United States have no constitutional capacity to exercise municipal jurisdiction, sovereignty, or eminent domain within the limits of a state or elsewhere, except in the cases in which it is expressly granted. Volume 44, U.S. Reporter, at page 223. Alabama is therefore entitled to the sovereignty and jurisdiction over all the territory within her limits, subject to the common law. Volume 44, U.S. Reporter, at page 228 and 229. Pollard versus Hagan, Volume 44, U.S. Reporter, page 221, 223, 228, and 229. Likewise, Title 18 of the United States Code at Section 7 specifies that the territorial jurisdiction of the United States extends only outside the boundaries of lands belonging to any of the 50 states. Therefore, in addition to the fact that no unrevealed federal contract can obligate me to perform in any manner without my fully informed and uncoerced consent, likewise, no federal laws apply to me or have any jurisdiction over me. My use of the United States Postal Service to receive mail is under threat, duress, and coercion per federal law, which asserts that this service must be used rather than private commercial delivery services, and the receipt of mail addressed with 2-letter capitalized federal zone abbreviations, in other words, HI, or numeric federal zone designations, zip codes, does not place me in any federal zone nor federal jurisdiction. For despite repeated pleas to those who send mail to me, they have been brainwashed in compulsory state brainwashing centers, public schools, and insist on canonicalizing the format of my mailing location into a federal zone format. And in fact, this process has been embodied in most computer software, making it impossible to receive necessary communications at my mailing location rather than at a federal zone address. This is further enforced under threat, duress, and coercion, and that the local post office refuses to deliver to general delivery for longer than 30 days. Thus be it known to all, in the nature of UCC 1-207/308, that I reserve my natural, common law right not to be compelled to perform under any contract of adhesion that I did not enter into knowingly, voluntarily, and intentionally. And furthermore, I do not accept the liability associated with the compelled and pretended benefit of any hidden or unrevealed contract or commercial agreement. And specifically, I refuse to be included in any federal zone. As such, the hidden or unrevealed contracts that supposedly create obligations to perform for persons of subject status are inapplicable to me and are null and void. If I have participated in any of the supposed benefits associated with these hidden contracts, I've done so under duress for lack of any other practical alternative. Revocation of power of attorney. Furthermore, I hereby revoke, rescind, and make void ab initio all powers of attorney, in fact or otherwise, implied in law or otherwise, signed by me or anyone else, as it pertains to the government identification number previously assigned to me, as it pertains to my birth certificate or any other license or certificates issued by any and all government or quasi-governmental entities, due to the use of various elements of fraud by said agencies to attempt to deprive me of my sovereignty or property. I hereby waive, cancel, repudiate, and refuse to knowingly accept any alleged benefit or gratuity associated with any of the aforementioned licenses, numbers, or certificates. I do hereby revoke and rescind all powers of attorney, in fact or otherwise, signed by me or otherwise, implied in law or otherwise, with or without my consent or knowledge, as it pertains to any and all property, real or private, corporal or incorporeal, obtained in the past, present, or future. I am the sole legal owner and possess a allodial title to any and all such property, including but not limited to my physical human body. I affirm that all the foregoing is true and correct. I affirm that I am of lawful age and am competent to make this affidavit. I hereby affix my own signature to all the affirmations in this entire document with explicit reservation of all my inalienable rights and my specific common law right not to be bound by any contract or obligation which I have not entered into knowingly, willingly, voluntarily, and without misrepresentation, duress, or coercion. The use of the notary below is for identification, and such use does not grant any jurisdiction to anyone. Further, affiant saith not. Subscribed and sworn without prejudice as said in the Uniform Commercial Code 1-308-207.
Anyone who claims to be a citizen of the United States under legal definition of the United States is pledging their allegiance to Washington, D.C. or the District of Columbia. They are not Americans. You can be a U.S. citizen or you can be an American, but you can't be both. It's impossible. Anyone who claims to be a citizen of the United States under legal definition of the United States is pledging their allegiance to Washington, D.C. or the District of Columbia. They are not Americans. You can be a U.S. citizen or you can be an American, but you can't be both. It's impossible.
There is no law, and to date, nobody has been able to show that there is a law for the average American citizen working day in and day out to pay an income tax.
But We the People Foundation for Constitutional Education put a full-page ad in the USA Today on July 7th, 2000. And within the body of that ad was a $50,000 challenge for anyone that could show the law. And to me, $50,000 is a lot of money. So I went after that and did the research based on the fact that I thought, let's put this baby to bed. I'm hearing all these rumors. I'm going to kill two birds with one stone. I'll answer these people's questions that are asking me, and then I'll win this $50,000. And, based on the research that I did throughout the year 2000 and that I'm still doing, I have not found that law. I've asked Congress. We've asked a lot of people in the IRS commissioners, helpers. They can't answer, because if they answer, the American people are going to know that this whole thing is a fraud.
There is no law. There is no law that requires the average American worker in the private sector to pay a direct, unapportioned tax on their labor and compensation for services. There is no law.
I really expected that, of course, there's a law that you can point to in the law book, the code, that requires you to file a tax return. Of course there is. Maybe I don't know what it is right then as he was speaking to me, but sure. So naively, I agreed to go off and research it and get back to him. 3.5 months later, I was at that point where I couldn't find the statute that clearly made a person liable, at least not me and most people I know. And I had no choice in my mind except to resign.
I had to leave the IRS because I presented evidence that I had accumulated indicating that the agency was violating the law and violating people's rights. And I asked the agency for a response to my sincere concerns. And the answer I got was that they would not respond to my concerns and that they would provide me with the paperwork necessary to tender my resignation.
You can look through the statutes and look for the law that requires you to pay. And when you do that, you can't identify a law that requires the average person in America who earns a wage and works in private business to pay an income tax.
American citizens, along with the foundation, have been asking the IRS to specifically provide them with the underlying legal foundation upon which they administer and enforce the personal income tax laws in our country.
At the national level, when people would attempt to contact somebody of a much higher authority, say the commissioner, same kind of thing. They would get answers that were in effect non-answers.
You have to understand that an agency which will unlawfully impose a tax that doesn't exist is not going to care. If we, the people, don't know what our rights are, they're not going to tell us.
If Americans just learned that the IRS was actually knowingly deceiving them, that would be enough for them to rise up and put a stop to it.
100% of what is collected is absorbed solely by interest on the federal debt. All individual income tax revenues are gone before 1 nickel is spent on the services taxpayers expect from government. People have been told, that you need this income tax system to fund government, which is absolutely ridiculous. I mean, my question is, well, if that's true, how did we fund government from 1776 to 1913?
The main purpose of the income tax is not to raise revenue, but to redistribute wealth and to control society.
A lot of people might say, well, gee, if there wasn't an income tax, what would happen to education? They don't understand that education is paid for the most part, out of state and local taxes, your property tax. People might say, well, how are we going to build and maintain our highways? If there's no money coming into the government, we need our highways. There is a tax on every gallon of gasoline that people buy. Proceeds from the income tax do not pay for highway construction.
I believe that in both spirit and substance, our tax system has come to be un-American. Death and taxes may be inevitable, but unjust taxes are not.
This small booklet includes the Constitution of the United States, the Bill of Rights, the Declaration of Independence. This is a document that every citizen should read. It's a document which freed an entire nation. This is the Internal Revenue Code, and this document, and the unlawful application of this document by the Internal Revenue Service has enslaved the nation that this document attempted to free.
What is the factual history of the United States, and how did we get here?
Diane, are you going to take that, or am I?
Oh, no, you go for it, Tim.
Okay, the factual history of the United States. Everything was going well until the Civil War. And everybody thinks that the Civil War was a conflict between the North and the South over slavery and so on like that. Well, it wasn't. It was about corporations. It was a corporate war, just like all of the other wars that the United States has been involved with. It all started there. And after the Civil War, they never went back and formed the Federation of States. The British territorial came over, and they started putting in their own government. They never told the people that it had to be reconstructed after the war. So since then, Britain has been putting in their agents and their, governments or whatever. The government that we have now does not belong to us. They're a foreign government. They don't even belong in our soil. Attorneys, and they're the worst, they work for the Queen. Anytime you get an attorney, they're there to screw you out of as much money as they possibly can. And they always tell you, hey, we're here for you, but it's total opposite. They're here to gouge you for as much money as they can possibly get. They're trying to keep everybody in America broke. That's why the so-called government, we call them the de facto, is totally foreign. In fact, most people don't know this, but the elections on November 3rd of this past year, whether Donald Trump or Joe Biden became president, on November 5th, the municipal corporation that they were being elected president for was liquidated. So they would have been president for 2 days. So it's all a scam, what's going on now.
Now, what do you mean? But what do you mean that it was liquidated?
The United States was liquidated. It's a corporation. And we also have the United States of America, territorial. They are in bankruptcy. So they're both corporations. The United States, Inc. That's what the president of the United States runs for. He's running for president of a corporation. That'd be like you and I going out and say voting for Burger King to who's the top dog at Burger King or McDonald's. We're voting for people of a corporation to run that. So it's all a scam. They have no money, none. The 160 trillion in debt is owed to we, the people. We are the owners of the land and soil. Everything that is here, we have paid for through our supposedly taxes. Okay? You don't have to pay taxes. Taxes are voluntary. It's all a scam, just like this COVID thing. It's a total scam. It's all to hide the fraud of the elections.
So the first spot we're going to go is 28 United States Code 3002. So you can see here the 28 is the title 28, which is from the last thing I just showed you. The body that we're looking at is the United States Code. That's a section symbol, and then that's the section number, 3002. So it's like 28 USC 3002. You can just type that into Google without typing in the little S symbol or anything else, and this will pop right up. It's really easy. Now in 28 USC 3002, you're going to scroll down to subsection 15, and you're going to see here, United States means a federal corporation. What? Okay, now we're going to find out where is that corporation located. We're going to go to a different body of law called the Uniform Commercial Code, otherwise known as the UCC. We're going to go to 9-307. So just like it goes by titles in the United States Code, in the Uniform Commercial Code, it goes by articles. So Article 9 is sort of like the 9th section, and then the subsection within that article is 307. And we're going to scroll down to Section H in this section. Location of United States. The United States is located in the District of Columbia. Well, goddamn. So wait a second there, Brandon. You mean to tell me that the United States is a corporation that is physically located in the District of Columbia? Yep. All right, next one we're going to look at is 42 United States Code, section 9102. We're going to scroll down to subsection 18. We're going to look at the definition of United States citizen. Means A, an individual who is a citizen of the United States by law, birth, or naturalization. Now don't forget, definition of United States is a federal corporation located in the District of Columbia. So you got to look here. You got led by law, by birth, or by naturalization. Law is by contract, birth, whatever, because you're going to change your nationality based off where you currently live. Naturalization. That's the big boy. That's the big one. Oh, gonna change your life.
What are the appropriate ways or loopholes to owning property and maintaining land rights? Now, and this is huge, because if you have, property and you have a loan on it, okay, and you're making payments to the bank and, what you can, and you're paying property taxes, is there, when you're sovereign, is that property more protected? Because there's almost where the government can come in and take it away from you, and they've done that several times in California.
Mm-hmm. Right. Well, what's happening there is to be able to get your land patent. All right. First, you have to become an American national, because U.S. citizens are considered corporations. Corporations and U.S. citizens cannot own land. All right. So you have to be, you can rent it all you want, but you cannot own it. So when you become an American national, you go through the process of getting your land patent, which means no more property taxes. It belongs to you, because right now everything is considered commercial, as in commercial code, corporation code. So all of the laws and statutes that are out there are for the corporations, and each citizen is a corporation. So they're basically working away, paying the debts of the bigger corporations. That's why they don't want American nationals around, because the more American nationals go, they have to start paying their debt.
Now,
corporations do.
In order to do that to your property, do you have to own it outright, or?
No, you can be paying on it, but be an American national. As soon as you become an American national, you go through this little course by Ron Gibson, and there's a couple other people that have the same process, and it costs like $100 or something like that to learn the process, and you search your title back as far as it goes to the land patent, because land patent was it was land given to the royalty of the kings back then, and it was given to them. And then the church came in and started saying, okay, well, we'll take the crummy land and we'll put the peasants on it, and they'll grow food, and they'll, and everybody else started doing the same thing. And then they says, hey, well, we should tax all of them, and we can keep collecting this land, and they'll never be able to own it. So you have to go back to the land patent where it was free land. Now, the county courthouses probably won't help you with that, and the title agencies will think that you're crazy. So you kind of have to do the search. You can pay somebody to do it to find out who was the original owner under the land patent, and then you have bought it from that person.
Wow.
And then it is your land, and you can do anything you want with it because you own it.
There's something, and to play, I don't even like to use the word devil's advocate. I'll just say, well, play the other side of it. But many people will say, well, I heard of somebody who owned their land, didn't pay taxes, and they got taken to jail for that reason. So I know that I don't own land myself, so I haven't been through this process, but there's something called a loyal title, which technically constitutes that you own the real property that is independent of any superior landlord. And I know that there's responsibility here, you guys. So again, we're not just saying that you just follow what Dennis says and then you don't understand the language. You have to also understand the loopholes of this, so that's not you. So maybe you could speak to that a little bit, Dennis, because I don't own any land, but these are stories that have been circulated where people will say, no, you guys are frauds. This is bad information, blah, blah, blah. Listen to me, my friend, da, 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 da. So what would you say to that?
I would say they need to do their homework. A loyal title is almost the same thing as a land patent. Okay, but once you go through that course, you are on the lawful land. American nationals are the lawful government of the land. Okay, everything else is corporation and corporate laws. Mm-hmm. All right, so them trying to, if they own their land and they have the land patent, no one can even come on their property. No one.
Wow.
So evidently they didn't own it outright, or they didn't have the patent, or they didn't have the allodial title.
That was it.
I'm sorry?
That was it. That was the last missing step that I had heard, is that was a person here in Sedona went through that same process, but he didn't have the allodial title. So there was just one step missing.
Right.
That was it.
Yeah. So, yeah, you have to do it correctly, or, they'll come in, because the corporations think they own everything, because they own the people because of the birth certificates, making everybody corporations. Mm-hmm. Once you get out of that by changing your status, they can't even talk to you, because every corporation is your employee, because we are the lawful government. That means police departments, that means judges, that means the Supreme Court, that means everybody.
Mm-hmm. Man.
Okay, and that's why everyone needs to become an American national, is to sway the tide, as it is, as you might say. All right, because we're on one side here and the government's on the other side with the U.S. citizens. And once we get closer to that, more and more people, even if it's like 3/4 way to half, okay, so it's like a third of the way through, you will see changes like you've never seen before. Because we are the law of the land, and that will change. And there's like 85 million something statutes and codes. Most of those can be voided out. And we can do that.
Growing.
And growing. And we have the authority to do that. And we need to start. And that's why we're doing these podcasts, and get people, on the land, protect yourself, get the assemblies going, and create our own courts and our own laws. And that's what we need to do.
Diane, I was in the same boat. I mean, I heard about this a little bit, but it's like, oh, it's a scam to not pay taxes. That's not true. Yeah. Okay, this is to take your rights back. And in the old days, like I'm talking way back to 2019, I thought that my rights couldn't be taken away. Okay, now it's like the conspiracy is literally the delusion that you actually have rights and that you're living in a free state and that you are an independent person and your rights are protected, that no one can come in and take away your shit or limit your body's your ability to worship God. Or, you know, I mean, no one's ever going to close the churches because we've got the ACLU, we've got all these lawyers. None of that stuff is true. So if you're looking at our podcast right now and you're saying, well, my world is this, and I'm going to just vote and expect my vote to be counted and know my rights are protected, wake the hell up. Okay, your rights are not what they were in 2019. Oh, because there was a crisis. Really, has there ever been another crisis before? Okay, this does take effort. It does, honest to God. I mean, I'm busy doing a bunch of other stuff, and I've got my office manager looking in and filling out all the paperwork for me. Okay,
Aww.
So Minnie thank God. Everybody needs a Minnie.
Can you clone her?
Minnie. Thank you for helping Dr. B go free.
And when we're getting all of this paperwork, I'm going to have a step-by-step, but you already got the step-by-step done. You just got to look into it. Like right now, okay, if you're watching the podcast, I'm getting information from Dennis and Diane the same way. Ron Gibson, property, land patent, buddy, that I'm going to be looking up this weekend. Alloidial title, I'm there. Okay, so this way I can learn more, and that's what you got to do. I mean, I just learned about the 2012 Olympics in London, and none of this stuff made sense. I mean, a dead baby scam, and this is, you know, just for everybody. People that know a heck of a lot more than me gave me some questions to ask two people who know a heck of a lot more than me too. And I just want to read this question. Okay, can you explain what the dead baby scam is and the history of the Dragon tribe in Africa? Now, wait, before you guys talk. Okay, I looked it up before I started to talk to you, and it brought me to the 2012 Olympics, and it was the most bizarre thing. You saw little kids in hospital beds, supposedly honoring the National Health Service and a children's hospital, and this symbol of death walking through the it was, huh? Okay.
Exactly. Yeah. And how do you for the Olympics, and you're going, what is really going on here? Well, it's their way of kind of hinting at the future. All right. And they do it subtly. That's like when Close Encounters of the Third Kind came out. All right, that came out, I can't even remember when. Good movie, but that's just to let people know that, yeah, there are UFOs, and they are out there. They're not going to give you any more information. So there's a lot of stuff on the internet about UFOs here and UFOs there, and there's more and more. It's because they're concerned about our planet more than we are. Okay, because everything works together. It's all synchronized. Okay, so they're concerned about what's going on here, even though Americans are sitting back on the couch watching the boob tube,
watching the predictive programming.
Yeah, exactly.
Like the movies that show us the future.
The programming, exactly. All right, and they're programming us all the time. So, but yeah, and I think I told you on one of the other podcasts about the people on the news where they read a CDC report, be prepared for the zombies, and everybody just looked at each other in awe and was, what are you talking about? So that's their little way of predicting what's going to happen in the future, and that's coming because of the jab.
Is that what they did with the dead baby scam too? Because I don't know anything about that one, Dennis, but I found an article on Anna von Reitz's website on this.
Right. Well, the dead baby scam is when you are born, you come out and you're born as a national. All right. Then the placenta comes out. All right. They said that's the first dead baby. You're the twin sister or the twin brother. And then
Straw
they
man.
put yeah, exactly. So
woman.
first one they bury, which they don't, they keep it for your DNA. So everyone's got DNA recorded wherever you were born. And then they put you in as the straw man and make you a corporation. Okay,
Yeah.
so they have total control of you.
Yeah, that's okay. Again, for the conspiracy theorist, Dennis, you just said on the CDC site they said zombie apocalypse.
Right. It was actually on the news, national
I
news.
saw this years ago and I was like, why is this on the seat?
What's the difference between a wartime and a peacetime flag? I saw a couple of presenters because there's people getting their sovereignty back around the world. What's the difference?
The difference is the wartime flag is the flag that everybody flies on the 4th of July and the holidays and all that thing like that. No one knew there was a peacetime flag. The peacetime flag has been out since the beginning of time, since the United States, and the United States of America. And it used to fly on all of the buildings back in the 30s and 40s and 50s. Okay. Then the corporations came in. All right. So the flags, they switched because of, World War I, World War II. They had the wartime flags and everybody was rah, rah, America, which is a great thing to do. But they never changed the flag back to peacetime flag. Why? Because they were always in a war. And everybody became accustomed to the flag that's flying on every flagpole and house now. That's actually the wartime flag. The civil flag is the stripes are the other way. We're at peacetime. And the flag now that has the gold fringe, the United States has been captured. The gold fringe. And that means maritime flag, which means it's run by the Pope and the Queen, the British territorial government.
Now, what's the difference between land and soil jurisdiction and admiralty law? Because there's a lot of talk about the Queen, the Pope, America, and the standard mind of an American, those are separate.
Right. The maritime law is run by the Queen, all water, inland waterways, oceans, and whatever. She's supposed to protect everybody that's on the high seas. That's maritime law. That's British territorial law. The land and the soil is the 6 inches. The soil is the 6 inches of the top part of the ground, and the land is beneath that. So the land and soil is international, and we belong on the land and soil, and we are the owners, the people. We, the people, are the owners of the land and soil. Excuse me. So anytime you're on the inland waterways, you're under the rule of the Queen. We're allowed to go out boating and fishing and so on like that, but you have to observe maritime law when you're out there in your boat or whatever you're doing on the waterways. They have control of that.
Now, okay, I've heard that there's different constitutions.
There are.
And I mean, the average Joe like me 3 weeks ago, I thought we had one constitution, and I thought that was being just dissolved because all of the rights that I thought were guaranteed to me were gone. What are 3 different constitutions?
Okay, the 3 different constitutions. You actually know what the Constitution is. A lot of people don't know that there are 3. Okay, they're contracts for the people to keep the government in line. That's why when Biden was running for president, the Constitution is just another piece of paper. Same thing with, when Obama was in there. We don't need the Constitution. It's just a useless piece of paper. They want to get rid of that because it holds them bound to what the people have the rights to be and to have. So there are 3, the territorial, the municipal, and for us, we actually live under the Declaration of Independence and the amendments and the articles.
So the Constitution is a contract that we can keep the government in check.
Correct.
We live under the Declaration of Independence.
Correct.
Okay, who formed the other constitutions? The one with the isn't the amendments as well as part of the Declaration of Independence?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, those are for we the people. The constitutions are to keep the government and the corporations in check. So, but they're running amok. They're getting rid of them. They're making laws like all those statutes and everything that they say, well, you can't do over 35 miles an hour, or you have to do this, or you have to do that, or you have to have license plates on your cars. It's all corporate law. It's put out by the corporations to bilk as much money out of us as they possibly can. That's all those are. As an American national, you don't have to pay any attention to any of those laws because they're all statutes. They're not laws.
So did you know that the United States has been bankrupt in the following years? 6 years there, 1776 all the way through 2017. Most people doesn't know that. We're just coming out of the last bankruptcy. Did you know that the United States of America has a wartime and a peacetime flag? Guess which one is the wartime? If you said the one on the left, you would be correct. That is our wartime flag that everybody knows about. Our peacetime flag is on the right. They're telling us something. They're telling us we're at war. That's why we fly that flag. Did you know that you're probably not a U.S. citizen? And what's the definition of a U.S. citizen? Well, do you live in the American Samoa, Guam, or American Virgin Islands? Do you work for the federal government? Do you currently serve in the military? Are you in a political office? Have you been granted political asylum? Are you an African American and not a state citizen? And are you a welfare recipient? If you've answered no to those questions, you're not a U.S. citizen. So trust me, you don't want to be called a U.S. citizen. Why? Did you know that U.S. citizens are property? This is a Supreme Court case law. Basically, therefore, I'm reading the C, the U.S. citizens residing in one of the states of the Union are classified as property and franchises of the federal government as an individual entity. So if you want to be classified as property, then you can remain a U.S. citizen. What we're about with the lawful assemblies is we're refuting all of this erroneous presumptions about us Americans, or we Americans. So did you know that the federal government is simply your employee? They're a corporation. They were hired by the nation states to provide collective services, which include the 19 enumerated powers, which are constitutions. Most people don't know there's actually 3 constitutions. And I'll get into that on the next slide. And they do not apply to living people. The Declaration of Independence applies to living people. And our sovereignty is recognized in the Treaty of Paris of 1783. Our ultimate sovereignty comes from our Creator. We're given this inalienable rights, but the human government recognized it, the Treaty of Paris.
I'm going to give you the secret. The secret is you got to figure out a way to live your life without using the Social Security number. Now, the Social Security Administration was a result of the Great Depression that happened under Franklin Delano Roosevelt and the institution of his New Deal program. Now, what people need to do is they need to start asking themselves simple questions like, okay, if this is the New Deal, then what was the old deal? What do you mean New Deal? Well, the deal is that you, the American people, would agree to be the surety for a debt, and the United States of America would go and borrow money from a Federal Reserve, which is a private bank, it's not a governmental entity, and we would agree to be sureties for any money they borrowed and spent under the guise of for the benefit of the American people. All the while giving money away to other countries and things of this nature. The Social Security number is the nexus that attaches you to the federal jurisdiction. A United States citizen is a federal citizen. It is not a state citizen. It's a federal citizenship. A United States citizen was created as a result of the 14th Amendment. The 14th Amendment came in as a result to give newly freed blacks a status in the country, because as a result of the Dred Scott decision, black people were not considered citizens of the country unless they had a state citizenship. And in the Dred Scott decision, of course, it was found that a black man did not possess a state citizenship, not a newly freed black man. So as a result of that, we had the war amendments, which are the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendment. The 13th being that slavery nor involuntary servitude should not exist anywhere in the United States. And then the 14th Amendment, which gave a status to newly freed slaves and included them in citizenship with all the other countries. It's a federal citizenship. This federal citizenship, it's good. It has positive and negative aspects associated with it. The positive aspects is that you do get a citizenship and you do get to participate fully in the benefits that the country has to offer. The negative side of it is in the acceptance of those benefits, you lose rights, some very important rights at times, and you have to really think about and be able to weigh your options when you take into consideration the rights that you're losing. They have something called the Ashwander Rule. Now, the Ashwander Rule number 6 speaks about that if you are an acceptor of a benefit and a privilege of a statute, you cannot challenge the constitutionality of that statute. So you lose the power to challenge constitutionally when you are an acceptor of benefits and privileges. And then you wonder about people talking about their constitutional rights. Well, you've just been taken outside the framework of the Constitution and been placed in a territorial jurisdiction where the federal government possesses what is called plenary power. This is always as a result of Article 1, Section 8, Clause 3 of the Constitution, which is the Commerce Clause. They have a right to regulate commerce. So they've converted everything into a commercial item into the country. And this is what you have to have an eye to see and an ear to hear when you are studying all this information, that the federal government considers everything to be commercial and every matter to be commercial. They consider your marriage to be commercial, your children to be commercial items, your labor to be a commercial item. These are all commercial items in their eyes. Their Achilles heel, however, is the fact that within their commercial world, there isn't any money. When I say there isn't any money, I'm talking about constitutionally mandated gold and silver. That is not being utilized in this Federal Reserve system. As such, there isn't any money because that's the only thing that is money, and it's the only thing that has ever been money, called money of exchange, money of substance. We have today money of account. It is money off credit, money by fiat. It doesn't really exist in contemplation of reality. It is credit. It's a future event. It's a payback when you get around to paying me back. So when we understand that that is how everything works, and we can begin to understand a new avenue of attack when we can get a remedy in court or in other situations by addressing it commercially and by following the rules commercially that they have to also follow, and be able to document this all along the way, because it's all about evidence. And when you don't have the evidence to substantiate your position, then you're on the losing end.
Attention, international public notice. This is not a solicitation. This is an approved lawful notice from the American government. This international public notice is to inform you that the foreign United States government has criminally converted your political status from an American to that of a foreign citizen. How and why? What you are about to learn is the true American history that was removed from our public school system completely by 1974, and more history that has been hidden from you. Know that it was all intentional. Let's begin. Your birthright as an American is to live in peace and abundance, which includes a public inheritance and a private inheritance. We Americans are all sovereigns in our own right because of one man, William Belcher. William inherited sovereignty in his own right from William the Conqueror in 1087 AD, and you have inherited that same right from him. This special form of sovereignty attaches to everyone born on the land and soil of this country. Unknown to you, you have inherited both private and public sovereignty. This fact brings us to our first American history lesson that was hidden from you. Sovereignty in your own right grants absolute control over your own body and property, but nobody else's. We fought and gained our public sovereignty as a country and nation when we won the Revolutionary War. So we are a sovereign country ruled over by sovereign people. Many nations can occupy the same land and soil, and that is the situation here in America. A member of the Winnebago Ho-Chunka Nation, born in Black River Falls, Wisconsin, has an automatic dual nationality status as both a Winnebago and as a Wisconsinite. They inherit their individual sovereignty from William Belcher, like any other American born on this land and soil as their birthright political status. And they maintain their Winnebago identity as part of the Ho-Chunka Nation too, being their cultural and heritage. The colonists and some of the native nations fought together to gain America's independence from several tyrannical kings. The last American war was the War of 1812, and we have not waged a war on anyone since then. Native nations have been abused by the foreign United States government, who are our subcontractors, like all the rest of us. This is not the doing or fault of the actual state Wisconsin, nor is it the fault of the Ho-Chunka Nation either. Many of the eastern seaboard native nations, like the Lenape and the Delawares, had treaties with King George II prior to the Revolution that were not honored. This is because King George lost the Revolutionary War and skipped town without mentioning that he owed them a settlement in gold for not being able to keep his treaty agreements. The Western native nations, except in California, generally speaking, hadn't been involved in much contact or conflict with the colonists or the kings prior to the so-called Civil War. More on the Civil War later. Unfortunately, the so-called Civil War began the era when the British territorial U.S. Army, operating as the Bluecoats, caused so much devastation, and it led to the creation of the reservation system. Everyone concerned was violently defrauded, first by the king, avoiding his treaty obligations to the eastern native nations, and later by the British territorial U.S. Army running rampant over the western native nations. You can see why they wanted to keep this little piece of American history out of our school textbooks. I'm about to tell you some more hidden American history, and yeah, you best believe it was hidden on purpose too. Each one of us is owed money and prepaid credit we and our ancestors earned, but were never credited for and never paid. This money is coming back to us because we and our parents and grandparents have been charged taxes, mortgages, etc. that we never owed, and because the fiat money system was mismanaged in a way that has resulted in a large excess of prepaid credit being owed back to each one of us. That money and credit needs to be returned to you. In addition, there are giant family trusts, like the Davila Family Estate and Trust, that's worth over $300 dodecallion alone, along with the St. Germain Family Trust, the V.K. Durham Trust, plus over 5,000 more, which were largely gifted to all peoples of the world. For example, the Avila funds are a bequest for a specific purpose, to break the chains of poverty and ignorance. This goal has been the same since 1520 AD, but dishonest trustees and wars and other things have prevented deployment of the funds for the specific purpose. The Avila Family Trust indenture hasn't been honored in over 500 years. It's time. These are the public and private inheritances that you don't know you have. Why were you not told? A 160-year-old criminal fraud scheme against you is still in progress, and that's why most of you don't know this. The criminal bankers who didn't return your money and credit, in collusion with the foreign United States government, are both standing in the way of these family trust funds being deployed worldwide. Think about it. Clean, abundant water is being delayed. Good organic food for everyone is being delayed. The end of paying taxes is being delayed. Universal access to sanitation, housing, education, medical care, and technology are being delayed. All this and more is being delayed by criminal government agencies and banks that have no rightful control or ownership interest in the money. We call that robbery and crimes against humanity. The Department of the Global Federal Reserve in Switzerland was supposed to sit down and negotiate the return and release of this gift money in 2005. They never came to the table. They know who the rightful heir is. they chose to ignore him. They stole these funds for their corporations and have misused them to promote war and misery for the past 20 years. All this criminal activity has to stop. You can help others and help yourself at the same time. First, correct your own political status so you are recognizable as an American again. And then join your local American state assembly and push. These crooks are our employees. I know what you're thinking right about now. What do you mean? I am an American. And what do you mean by our employees? Okay, class is in session. Let's learn some more hidden on purpose American history. Your inheritance as an American is not the military flag and the fiat military script called a Federal Reserve Note, or FRN. It is actually the Civil Peace flag and the asset-backed American Federation dollar, or AFD. Most people don't know we have two flags, Open Gate for peacetime and Old Glory for wartime. And why not? How is it that America, our country, has been at peace since 1815, but the U.S. has been at war and declaring war on something every 2 years? Your government as an American is not the United States Governmental Services Franchise Corporations. It is actually the 50 unincorporated American states assemblies. Your nationality as an American comes from your state of the Union, not from raising your right hand. These are the 50 nationalities of the sovereign nation states of America. Which nationality are you? Americans don't live under a constitution as citizens. We live by the Declaration of Independence as sovereigns. You probably were not taught this American history, were you? Other words for citizen are employee, officer, subject, slave, and indentured servant. You were born a free man or woman with unalienable rights, but you were made into a bonded servant, then later into a slave by 2 birth registrations. The U.S. Governmental Services Corporations, acting in breach of their contracts, created those bonds. What contracts, you may ask? You probably know of 2 such contracts, the Constitution of the United States of America and the Constitution of the United States. That's right. These constitutions are contracts that we have with 2 corporations. The USA Inc. works for us, and the US Inc. works for us. The United States Governmental Services Corporations are our subcontractors, and we Americans and our American government are literally their employers. All this time, you thought they worked for you because you paid taxes. Nope, that's not the truth of the matter at all. Here's another important, little-known fact in American history. Those Davila trust funds I told you about, they fully funded government services for everybody. No more taxation was required or even needed for public services since 1941. All taxes since then went toward war reparations and as gifts to the British monarch and to the Pope, which they extorted as gift and estate taxes that you never owed. World War II forced the world to rebuild. So instead of relieving you from taxes, the Avila funds were diverted into the Marshall Plan and other efforts. These funds were loaned out for this purpose for 50 years and were supposed to have been repaid in 1995. But the due date came and went. The banks asked for and were granted a 10-year extension, with settlement due in 2005. But again, that date came and went too. We began hearing rumors in 2022 about global project funding from the U.S. military. They didn't tell you that this is where that funding was coming from, and that they were robbing the heir of the trust and ignoring the trust indenture again. The funds are not coming from the World Bank, not the Global Debt Facility, not any global collateral accounts, not from NESARA or JASARA, not from the World Trust, which was set up and provided by the family of our fiduciary for the United States of America Unincorporated. And they have bungled that beyond belief too. This is the U.S. military's way of sneaking in the back door. Don't let them know I stole it in the first place. Criminal attempt to put the money back. Yet they still continue to exercise non-consensual control over funds that don't belong to them. We told them no. Nowhere in your service contracts are you granted fiduciary authority to access any funds on our behalf. You also most likely don't know that they, acting in continual breach of contract, have authorized other criminal and fraudulent legal activities too. Oh, did you just think to yourself, how can it be both criminal yet legal at the same time? Yes, I thought so. Let me just identify a few of those criminal yet legal activities to help you better comprehend what they are doing. Number one, when you make a bank deposit, you think you are putting your money in the bank for safekeeping. But no, you are legally, although unknowingly, giving your money to the bank for safe having. Did you know that? Your money is now theirs every time you make a bank deposit. They can now legally use it for all of their so-called lending that they claim to be doing with their money. This is what you call semantic deceit. It's the name of their game, and it's legal. Not to mention that those Federal Reserve notes are not even money at all. Yeah, that's number two. Another criminal yet legalized racket they authorized. A Federal Reserve note is a promissory note, that is, an IOU. And because there is no due date and no specific form of repayment stated on it, it's not a negotiable instrument at all. Yet you have been forced to use it as money in exchange for goods and services. Now, class, can anyone give me the definition for inflation? Number three, our honorable American soldiery were turned into a paid foreign mercenary force. The War of 1812 was the last legitimately declared war. All wars following that, including the so-called Civil War, were and are not properly declared wars, just part of a saga of continual mercenary conflicts, i.e., wars for profit. Did I mean to say that the U.S. military is both criminal and legal? Yes, I did. Wars for profit, i.e., mercenary conflicts, are when presidents or CEOs of commercial corporations like the United States of America Incorporated hire trained soldiers to steal, kill, and maim as they devastate communities and economies for commercial gain. Tell me, what did those ancient artifacts you were ordered to confiscate on your first missions in the Iraqi War have to do with protecting America's freedom? Nothing. Soldiers, please read some real American history to learn what wars for profit are really about. That includes all wars since 1815. World War I, World War II, Korean War, Vietnam War, Desert Storm, Afghanistan, Iraqi War, Libya, Yemen, Niger, Somali, Operation this and Operation that, war on this and war on that. I repeat, America is not at war. Our International Peace Proclamation has been declared across the land since 2017, and we have raised our peace flag for the first time in over 200 years. America has been at peace since 1815. It's the federal subcontractors, the USA Inc. and the US Inc. that have been the ones at war, or should I say, in continual commercial conflict. Number 4, a vast majority of taxpayers are volunteering to do so. If you are paying federal income taxes and are not a federal employee, then you are literally volunteering. If you don't work for and receive a check from the federal subcontractors, you probably have no federal income to tax. Were you told that your income tax payments are gifts that you are giving to the U.S. government? They say it right there in their own legal tax codes at 31 U.S.C. 321 D1 and D2. It states the federal income tax are gifts and estate taxes, which you are giving away. Remember what I said. All government expenses were paid for as of 1941. Every fire hydrant, every school, every airplane, every expense for government services or infrastructure throughout the entire planet was paid for as of 1941. You don't see corporate warmongering and crooked banks anywhere in that list, do you? Right about now, you need to be asking yourself, what does legal really mean? And what are these taxes that I've been paying actually paying for? Your money, your national defense, your labor, just to name a few, have all been latched upon by criminal foreign governmental services subcontractors. Latching is illegal and always has been, but by pretending to have a custodial trust interest, they got away with it. Why have they done this? For two primary reasons: to pay off their corporation's commercial debts and to fund their criminal yet legal activities. How would you like it if I impersonated you, committed credit fraud to get access to your credit, and paid off my house and Lamborghini loans? This would be you, blowing your top. Urgh! This is exactly what your employees have done to you. So what are you going to do about it? Marches and protests are for U.S. citizens. Declarations and assembling are for sovereigns. Think about the difference. Did we win our freedom or not? You must first know who you are. U.S. citizen, United States citizen, citizen of the United States, U.S. national, American national, state citizen. Have you forfeited your birthrights as an American state national? You know what America needs? A reformation? No. A reconstruction? That should have happened already, but didn't. Think again. A restoration? That's underway, but even more than that, a resurgence. Yes, that's the spirit we need. Let's continue with our American history lesson. Our organic 1776 Union of States constructed our national government, calling it the United States, being later changed to the capital T, United States in 1851. Then they constructed our international government, calling it the United States of America, an unincorporated federation of states. Wherever you see this trademark, know that it belongs to us. Our foreign subcontractor stole it. Without a circle denotes sovereign undelegated power. With a circle denotes enumerated delegated power by your sovereign American government, which our U.S. government subcontractors abuse. And remember these flags? Both the civil flag and the Title IV military flag belong to us too. Here is another example of more subcontractor abuse of delegated powers. We did not authorize them to instigate commercial conflicts, i.e. wars for profit, all across the globe in our name. You see, there is a lot of hidden on purpose American history removed from our public schools and textbooks to make you wonder why. There was a third constitution that we hear nothing about. Our American government contracted with one American subcontractor and two foreign subcontractors, the British monarch and the Roman papacy, done under three separate constitutions. The American contract is called the Constitution for the United, lowercase u, States of America of 1787. It delegated limited authority to the American Federal Governmental Services Provider as a federal republic. The British contract is called the Constitution of the United, capital U, States of America of 1789. It delegated limited authority to the British Territorial Governmental Services Provider as a territorial democracy. The Roman contract is called the Constitution of the United States of 1790. It delegated limited authority to the Roman Municipal Governmental Services Provider as a municipal theocracy. Let me say it another way. Replace the word Constitution with the word contract, then read it like this. The contract for the United States of America of 1787. The contract of the United States of America of 1789. The contract of the United States of 1790. Do you comprehend the truth now? The constitutions are nothing more than service contracts to work for us. The for-hire military, the federal civil service, and the whole federal hierarchy are supposed to be here to provide us with 19 enumerated services as defined in those contracts. That's why we delegated enumerated powers to provide those services. However, it seems that they don't read very well because they have criminally breached, violated, and unilaterally added to the terms of our agreement. As their employer, how would you grade their performance card? A big fat F minus. We started out with 3, but only our foreign federal subcontractors remained in operation after 1861. Why did only they remain? Because they got rid of the competition. They attacked, murdered, or disbanded members of our American federal subcontractor, the Federal Republic, and our federation after the so-called American Civil War, and kept them on the run for decades. For over 160 years, they have impersonated you and substituted themselves as your American government. And they've gotten away with it. Why? Because you weren't here, according to them. According to them, our American government just disappeared after 1861. That is what they told the rest of the world. Based on this big lie, they claimed emergency powers for themselves and pretended to be our trustees and custodians in our absence. In so doing, they stole control of our government. You, your identity, your assets, your credit, and your land, everything. They took over your identity like any common credit card hacker, and the colluding banks let them have access to your credit. They've been spending you into the poorhouse ever since. Every time either one of these colluding foreign subcontractors declares bankruptcy, they pass their debts on to you and your kids. Their national debt gets loaded off onto you, even though you already paid it. Remember all those Federal Reserve notes that are IOUs? Every time you gave them goods and services in exchange for their IOUs, they got something for nothing. So, of course, their national debt grew exponentially because all the goods and services you contributed never got credited. The books were never balanced. They made it look like we owed this huge debt when in fact we already paid in goods and services. To add injury to insult, they charged us interest on this phony national debt without one whisper about our national credit. The crookedness and malfeasance of both parent corporations, the USA Inc. and the US Inc., and their commercial banks speaks for itself. Well, honey, we're home, no longer absent, no longer in interregnum, as they told the world. Our states are now in session. We established claims against the phony government beginning in 1998 based on what we did know at that point. But what we learned in 2001 came as a total shock. When learning on his mother's deathbed that our very own James Clinton Belcher was the hereditary head of state for the Federation of States, DBA, the United States of America of 1776, that news was overwhelming. We had to come to terms with the fact that in order to restore our rightful American government, the lineage of the members of the Federation of States have to muster the courage to come out of hiding. As the head of state on November 4th, 2015, James Clinton Belcher issued new sovereign letters patent and a joint declaration of sovereignty with the native nations of the Athabascans and Lakota Sioux. As the Federation of States regrouped, James Clinton Belcher, holding the only summoning authority as the head of state, called the States of the Union into session on June 29, 2017, for the first time in over 150 years. The Federation of States, DBA, the United States of America Unincorporated, has leaned the phony government, the foreign United States Governmental Services Corporations, for breach of contract and fraud. On behalf of the American people, we have chartered a new bilateral banking system and established new trade and merchant banks to serve you and return assets and credit you are owed. We monetized commercial liens and cashed in bonds owed to our government for the initial funding. We are now getting to the enforcement regarding the private family trusts, the Villa and St. Germain trust funds, and are just beginning the process of recoupment of credit and other restitutions owed. We have reclaimed your American birthright inheritance, your identity, your credit, your gold, and your land assets for you. Your inheritance of rights and assets is now waiting for you to claim. So now, do you want to know what you can do about this 160-year-old criminal fraud scheme that has been perpetrated against you? Rise up out of bondage servitude and declare your birthright inheritance as an American state national and claim your prosperity account. Your actual American government, the Republican form of government you are guaranteed, is being peaceably restored. The Federation of States is holding your inheritance until you come claim it. Contact your local American State Assembly at the link below or at the menu tab above to respond to this international public notice. We know this may sound hard to believe, so refer to the detailed research at claimyourinheritance.info/research and get educated about this hidden American history to know why you need to correct your political status so you can claim your birthright inheritance. One final word. What's owed to you isn't welfare. What's owed to you is an inheritance and a restitution. Number one, for the use of your assets. Number two, for bills you were charged that you never owed, including mortgages. Number three, for payment for your own natural resources like gas and oil and timber that you paid full price for. And number four, for abuse you suffered as fines and fees and taxes that you didn't owe, and your parents didn't owe, and grandparents didn't owe, and your great-grandparents didn't owe. Welcome home.
Every county has between 240 and 250 private for-profit corporations acting and pretending to be government, and they're not, because they weren't elected by the people. And voters aren't people, because if you're a people, you don't vote, you elect. Voters are citizens. That's chattel property, that's slaves, and you're bonded and insured, just like they are. You're not a free man. Get that through your head. If you're still a U.S. citizen, you're check marking those boxes, you're not a free man. Now, some people don't want to be free. I get that. But some of us do. Some of us believe that's a God-given right to be free, and that this is what our nation was founded upon, is freedom. It's what I fought for. It's what I've been fighting for my whole life. Are you free or not, Mr. Police Officer, Mr. FBI Agent, Mr. Judge? Or are you perpetrating the problem? That's what you're doing. You're perpetrating the problem for a paycheck to pay for the car and the house that you don't even own. Now, that's my definition of fucked up. Sorry for cussing.
Exercising your freedom. You are responsible. You're the one that is responsible. That's freedom. You're not using the government for anything. It's very simple. If you have to go to them for a loan, that's public. You got to get an FHA loan or a school loan or something like that. That's in the public. Privately, you can get together with some of your boys. You say, you know what, we're going to go and buy some gold and we're gonna put that together collectively, and we're gonna start doing all our business with gold. Kind of like in the movie John Wick. That's what John Wick was. It was a public and private movie. Did you see the scene in there where the police came to his house and he had dead bodies in the house, and the police even looked in there and saw the dead bodies, and he said, "Thank you, have a nice day," and he called a private cleaning crew to come clean up everything, and he paid them in gold, and everybody in the movie was doing everything in gold, and the only time you saw Federal Reserve notes is when they burned them motherfuckers up. Only one scene in the whole movie you saw Federal Reserve notes, and John Wick set that shit on fire, a whole pile of money. I'm just saying, all right? So what I want you to understand, okay, is that the public is bankrupt. When they took all your gold and silver, they took away your private right, and they took away your access to the private domain to do business privately, okay? And then they issued you a social security number that everything that the government gives you is attached to that number. Everything they give you is attached to that number. That's why the secret of getting private is to stop using the social security number. This is why all the wealthy people is telling you, don't put shit in your goddamn name. Put it in your business name. Put it in a trust. Put it in something like that. But motherfuckers can't seem to understand the shit and keep complaining about why they're getting taxed. Because the tax laws wasn't designed for employees, nigga. They was designed for businesses.
Well, here it goes. The elite are not the slightest worried about a bill being passed to tax the rich. They're sitting back laughing at you. Why? They don't have anything to be taxed. Oh, you say, I never thought about that. They don't own that jet. They don't own that automobile. They don't own that penthouse. They just put that coat on every morning. They don't own it. They are taught to control everything and own nothing.
To be a secure party / creditor, I mean, if you just want to be technical about it, all right, all you're doing is it's an asset protection strategy. And what do we mean when we say asset protection? What we're saying is, first and foremost, you've been signing documents all your life, your mother, starting with your parents, when they got your birth certificate, giving blank signatures without a qualified signature on document, allowing government and government agencies to utilize that signature to pledge interest in your labor, your future labor, for the acquirement of debt from the central bank. So you hear people say, well, every human being is worth about $600,000, $650,000, and supposedly where that number came from is the fact that they are able to determine what every human being at a minimum is worth. And this is why you have a minimum wage. Notice you don't have a maximum wage. And they can take that and calculate that for the approximate time that you live or your working life, and come up with a number, and then go and borrow it, make a bond out of it, and then go borrow against your name. Makes plenty of sense to me. Every human being that is born in this country has a minimum value. All right. So the question you need to be asking first and foremost is, how are you responsible for the national debt? Is it the national debt, the debt that's owed by the United States? Not the United States of America. The United States, which is in that 10-mile square in Washington, D.C. It's a federal debt. They call it the federal debt. And they have what are called federal citizens that are being utilized as sureties for the national debt. So how did you become a federal citizen, or better yet, a U.S. citizen? Because that's what's guaranteeing the national debt. Well, in my opinion, a lot of people say the birth certificate. I don't think it's the birth certificate. I think it's the Social Security card. When you're at the hospital, there's two things that they try to get you. They'll put you in jail, or try to, if you try to leave the hospital without a birth certificate. But they can't do anything about the Social Security number, and the Social Security is, voluntary. It's voluntary for you to have Social Security, a Social Security number. And Social Security number is evidence that you are some sort of beneficiary, or you're in some sort of need, or you need to be taken care of by the government. That's a number so the government can take care of you. So it's this idea that the government needs to take care of you, which is the reason you have this presumption that in some kind of way you are some sort of surety for the national debt. They said they made a deal with you. It's called the New Deal. You know, come work for us and we'll take care of you. Come be our guarantors for the national debt and we'll take care of you. And when you go back and study what happened prior to 1933, from 1913 to 1933, 1913 is when Woodrow Wilson signed into law the Federal Reserve Act. 20 years later, they bankrupt the country and then took everybody's gold away. And now you have fiat currency, and obviously they can, you know, issue as much currency as they want to under this new system. And it's essentially monopoly money. It's not currency that's not backed by anything. There's an interesting case, Perry versus the United States, that kind of touches on this, and you can kind of elucidate you a little bit about that particular situation. But the secure party process is you giving notice to the government that in no way does are you willing to allow them to use you as some sort of slave, or, you know, pledge your labor for the repayment of a debt. Now, for that to happen, you have to be a U.S. citizen, which means you have to be in the public. Okay, because it's a public debt. It's not a private debt, it's a public debt. That's the public debt. That's what they call it, the public debt. So the public is represented by an all caps name, which a lot of people call a straw man, a nom de gore, a transmitting utility, an artificial person, just you know, Enslaves, a lot of different names that you'll see people call this all caps name. Now, people in the public, they like to put out that it's all some sort of, you know, some sort of conspiracy theory, or it's stupid. When, you know, anybody at first, things begin to dawn on you. You know, you'll say, okay, well, yeah, why are they writing my name in all caps on my utility bill? Why are they writing my name in all caps on the caption of the pleading when I go to court? Why are they writing my name in all caps on my driver's license, my social security card? You know, why is it on my credit cards? Why is my name in all caps? Well, that's to signify that that's the public representation of you. There's a public and a private. The private representation of you is when your name is written in the Christian appellation of your name. Is when you're writing the Christian appellation of your name. All right, so that is the private side. That's the private side. So you have a public and a private. So in the public, everything is bankrupt, and your straw man is in the public, so he is a debtor. Okay, he is the guarantor, he is the entity that's being used as a pass-through to take private credit in and draft it into the public for the repayment of the national debt. That's why they call it a transmitting utility. It serves as a bridge from the private into the public. Everything in the public is an artificial person. That's why everything has all caps. So you see your senators, they're talking, you look at their name tags, they're in all caps. Everything is in all caps because everything in the public is a person. Called a person. I remember I heard Justice Breyer in the Judicial Committee, the role of Supreme Court under the Constitution. He was, well, now he's explaining to Dianne Feinstein, you know, that that women were persons and things like that. They have something that has the ability to have rights in the public, civil rights. It's an interesting concept, you know, how they came up with this straw man. But they try to make it seem like it's all just you know, in the public or the private, you know, it's all the same thing, you know, and that, you know, people basically who are talking about the straw man theory, they're crazy, you know, this is crazy, and they'll never say it's crazy. They'll just always tell you what you believe, but they never will tell you what it is, and they never will answer any questions about it. But obviously, the federal government is borrowing money from the central bank, which is the Federal Reserve in this country. And right now, it's currently about to go past probably, you know, $31 trillion because they're trying to borrow another $3.5 trillion. It's already around $28-29 trillion with no end in sight. And what you are doing, you ought to know in the Bible it says a debtor is a what? Slave, is beholden to the creditor. So what they're doing, they're enslaving the whole entire world through debt, through a fictitious debt. A made-up debt. They pulled it out of their ass, out of thin air. All right, so what the secure party seeks to do, it seeks to give public notice that you have an interest in all of your property that is associated with that name in the public. All right, because that property is being utilized in the public under a presumption that you have given them carte blanche to do whatever they want to do with it. And no, you can't do whatever you want to do with it. I was just at give an example what I'm talking about. I was just at LA Fitness and I was removing someone off my account. And the lady was trying to tell me, well, no, sir, we can't remove that person off of that account. And so I said, what are you saying? I got to just keep paying for that person? He said, yeah. I said, look, let me talk to somebody else. I said, one thing I do know is you can't tell me how to spend my money or who to spend it on. And then she broke out later and said, well, if you come back, I just don't have the stuff to do it right now. If you come back on Monday, I can do it. People try to play you like that. And your government is the same way. They're going to try to play you like that, try to play like there's nothing that you can do. We're just going to use your property. And when I say property, your property, I mean your labor, your freedom, your name, anything that's representative of that in the public. We're just going to continue to use that property the way that we want to. And that, my friends, is some BS. No, they can't do that. So what the secure party process seeks to do, it seeks to give public notice that you have an interest in your property, and you list all your property on a collateral description, and you're naming your all caps name as the debtor because it's in the public, and you're naming you, the real living person, as the creditor. Okay, you are securing your interest in your property. This is why they call it a secured party. You become the secured party. There's an unsecured party, and then there's a secure party. A secure party has a contract, okay? There's a contract that you have, a security interest in the property that makes you secure. My position is secure. Now they call it a perfected security interest. Perfected meaning that you went through the necessary steps to give public notice of your interest in that property, which gives you first in line, first in time. Because we're talking about liens. Because in society today, money is created through liens. As I said earlier, I just said it in another way. I said interest in things. Another way of saying interest in things is liens. A lien gives you an interest in a thing. A lien gives you an interest in a thing. So they are always constantly trying to put liens against you. Here in Georgia, they just practically admitted OCGA 1711-1. They tell you straight up that when you are convicted of a crime, they put a lien on you. Well, this is what we are trying to stop. We're trying to stop them from putting lien against our property by informing them that we already have a lien against the property. So whatever lien that they come to put against your property is going to be secondary or junior to yours. And if they want the senior interest in the property, then they need to pay you off of what your interest is, which is usually about anywhere from $100 million on up. Okay, they got to pay you that money. That's how it works. Anybody know about liens? That's how it works. Now, when you read your security agreement, you're not refusing to honor them for the satisfaction of any obligation. They just need to come to you and talk to you and get your authorization for the clearance of that debt. So that's why you put your contact information on there so they can contact you, and you let them know, like, look, I have the security interest in this. I'm the creditor of that artificial entity, that all caps name, John Henry Doe. But look, I'm an honorable person. I'm solution oriented. Give me the presentment and I will accept it for value and return it to you for full settlement and closure of this obligation using my private credit. Now, you may ask the question, well, what gives you value? Well, all human beings have value. No one can determine how much a human being is worth. There's a minimum value that can be associated to all human beings, but not a maximum value, because you don't know what human being, how things will turn for anybody on the planet at any given moment. I think there is a verse in the Bible said it only takes an instant for God to make you extremely wealthy. Only takes an instant. They don't know, who's the next wealthy person. Jeff Bezos is, seeking to become the first trillionaire. They don't know. You'll have no way to be able to gauge who's going to be what. So you can put a value on your labor. Workman is worthy of his hire. Okay, so they have to agree to whatever you say your labor is worth. Just like if somebody comes to me and they want a consultation, I'm going to tell them the value of the consultation. They're not going to tell me. Okay, so the same thing you're doing with the government. You tell the government what the value of your labor is. You don't let them tell you. They give you the minimum value of what your labor is, all right? Treating you like a slave. So in addition to this, so secure party, it is actually a banking technique where once you encumber all of your property, the next step is for you to know how to transfer that value of that property represented by a negotiable instrument. We prefer to use international bills of exchange or bills of exchange or something to that effect. Some people choose to use promissory notes. Promissory notes are two-party instruments. Bills of exchange are three-party instruments. The reason bills of exchanges are appropriate for processes like this is because they require presentment and they're drawing against something. What they're drawing against is a bond that you have on file with the Treasury Department. And every time that you discharge anything, okay, like you're gonna give notice of that fact, and you're going to deduct the amount of whatever you're discharged against that bond that you have on file with the Treasury Department. I'm running through this real quick, but secure party is for discharge of debt. I don't understand, when people ask questions, has anybody been successful with secure party? A lot of people have. A lot of people have discharged debt all the time. I don't understand why y'all don't understand that. It happens all the time. Is it easy? No. And it's usually because a lot of people don't know what they're doing. They just get a negotiable instrument, put it together, and then take this. And that's, the crux of the situation. That's, the majority of the problem is because people don't understand how to do it. But what I would suggest that you do is come on over to SPC University and join. You can join at the $59 level, $99 level. Come and get 16 classes. So, you can see some real insight into this. The next thing I would urge people to do, get you a little pocket edition of Black's Law Dictionary. Like, I was just talking about theme. Yep, there it is right here. Theme. Sense one, the subject matter of a right, whether it is a material object or not. Any subject matter of ownership within the sphere of proprietary or valuable rights. Things are divided into three categories. Number one, things real or immovable, such as land and tenements. Number two, and hereditaments. Number two, things personal or movable, such as goods and chattels. And number three, things having both real and personal characteristics, such as a title deed and a tenancy for a term. The civil law divides things into corporal and incorporeal. And these are, keep one of these on you. But that's, that is essentially, an interest in a thing is what you're doing. You're using secure party to have a priority interest in property. I wish people would understand it's real simple. And people in the mortgage industry should understand it. You do title searches on property before you'll give a loan against it to make sure that you have the first in line, first in time. That's all you're doing. And all of these people, it's just amazing to me. They talk about this process and they try to give it qualities that it never was really intended to have and never has had, and that wasn't intended to have. And this status correction and all these different words that are thrown out about it, when it's just a way of doing business in a world where there is no money. That's what it is.